today's guest teacher is Robina Courtin, who is our resident teacher this year. We're very happy to have her here. And
sit down, everyone.
The topic is the three jewels, but I'm sure whenever Robina will know why. So enjoy.
Can I have this thing off here? I want to just take it in my hand. Can I put the thing down?
You can have more lights.
Well, I don't think I'm going to say what the Buddha is, and I won't say what the Sangha is, but I might say what the Dharma is, okay? And then the other ones might follow. I think one of the things I've found over the years, being a person from the materialist world, you know, is that we mystify what we call religion. We make it something in the sky, and I think this is the most disgusting thing that we do. Honestly, it's just really shocking, you know. So then we come to the East and we get all these holy ideas of what we think meditation is, and we think it's all to do with good feelings and spiritual experiences and visions, and it's just all complete garbage, all right? It is garbage. The point is, if you're going to be a Buddhist, if you take away all the kind of Eastern way of talking about things and all the conceptions we have and all the projections, what you're doing, what you're being is, as one of my teachers said, is you're being your own therapist. That's what spiritual practice is. So spiritual practice is all about knowing your mind, knowing the junk in your mind, because the Buddha is simply saying that the junk in our mind is the source of our suffering. It's as simple as that. It really is as simple as that. But because we become, you know, from the materialist world where we believe that maybe either the Creator made us, which is not just the materialist world, that's one of the views in the universe, we're made by somebody called God, or we're made by somebody called Mummy, you know? And the logic is the same. Somebody else put you on this earth. And so one of the things that Buddha is arguing with is this concept. Whether it's the concept of a creator or your parents making you, in one sense it's the same. And he would disagree with this one fundamentally, you know. And so we can see if we misuse that concept, what it brings is the victim mentality. And this is what Buddha would say is the source of our suffering, the junk in our own mind, the voices of ego. And they're really simple, these voices. We all know them. They're called attachment, anger, pride, jealousy, fear, depression, anxiety. So dealing with this, that's being spiritual. Sitting down with your legs crossed or your eyes crossed or whatever, and your legs closed, your eyes closed, and thinking that spiritual is having a vision or feeling nice or being mindful, excuse me, you're completely up a creek without a paddle. As Lama Zopa says, thieves need mindfulness. If you want to be mindful, look at your shoes, you know. Mindfulness in its nature is not spiritual. Mindfulness in its nature is not spiritual. It is merely a technique, you know, a psychological technique. So from that point of view, you can really say, not joking, that Buddha is a supreme psychologist. Buddha doesn't talk about a soul. Buddha doesn't talk about a creator. Buddha talks about the mind. I mean, you would have heard this by now. Buddha talks about the mind. So mind is what goes on inside. And for Buddha, it's not your brain, number one. It doesn't come from mummy and daddy, number two. It didn't come out of nowhere. And it is the source of your suffering. It is the source of your happiness. So when you really, as I'm saying, bringing Buddhism right down to earth, what you're doing is you're being your own therapist. And I'm talking about therapy at a really subtle level, a really refined, sophisticated level. These amazing techniques called meditation, concentration meditation, that have been around for thousands of years. You know, I mean, Buddha took them from the Hindus. They're just these brilliant psychological techniques that enable you to know your mind really deeply and really well, and then to learn to cultivate your mind, to develop the positive qualities because they're the source of your happiness, to lessen and eventually eliminate the negative qualities because they're the source of your suffering, so that you become a really marvelous, kind, wise, compassionate human being. This is the point, you know. This is the point. So the reason then for a person to listen to Buddha's teachings, the reason to listen to Buddha's viewpoint, the way Buddha thinks about the universe, karma, emptiness, compassion, all the Buddha's philosophical presentation, the reason is to rethink the way we see the world. Because another way of putting it is that Buddha's saying, and this is his particular approach, that, again, it brings us to the mind, that the reason we suffer, as I'm saying, is the junk in the mind. So the way to define the junk in the mind is certainly in terms of attachment, anger, pride, jealousy, depression, these emotions that we all know so well. But also, interestingly, it's all the viewpoints we have about self and the world. So we can see one viewpoint of the world is that God created you. Another viewpoint is that your mother and father created you, that your mind is the brain. This is a viewpoint. This is a philosophy. Now, we take this as a given, We take this as an absolute truth. We say it's science and it's true. Well, as you're hearing here, no doubt, Buddha would disagree with that, So then you think, well, that's kind of, that's fine. I'm very happy to hear philosophy, but that's kind of boring, all that talk. I want to meditate, please, because I want a nice feeling. Well, that's not the point, The reason to hear Buddha's teachings is because he has got this a very clear view of what is truth, what is real, what is not real, what is happiness, what causes it. And the thing is, we've all got these questions. Everybody in this room asks, why this? Why war? Why the environment? Who am I? Where do I come from? We all have these questions, And so it's our responsibility to find answers to them. So Buddhism happens to be, as we can hear, a particular approach, But the point about having a philosophy is it's not just meant to be merely a bunch of ideas that you have in your head that have no impact upon your life. The point that Buddha's making is that the philosophy we carry around with us in the world, the views we have about who I am, where I come from, is there a creator? What is karma? Is the mind not physical? Is it the brain? All these things which seem merely philosophical. The point is, if we start to investigate, we're going to see that the viewpoints we hold as the truth have particular experiential implications. And this is the point. Because this is the way Buddha would say it. He says, we suffer because we have a view that our mummy and daddy made us. Now, that sounds a bit hilarious. You'd think, well, what's that got to do with the price of fish? How can you suffer because you think your parents make you? Well, it's really obvious. You listen to the view we have. I didn't ask to get born. It's not my fault. It's my mother's fault, my father's fault. I'm put on this earth by somebody else. I'm given a brain. I'm given depression, anger, jealousy. It's not my fault. This is the view we all believe as a truth. Well, this, Buddha would say, is the view of ego, and it's completely mistaken. He would suggest it's a lie. He would suggest it simply isn't true. Now, again, remember one of the points about Buddha, because he's not a creator, he doesn't assert a creator. He doesn't want you to believe what he says. He says, this is how it is. He's very content to tell you how things are. He is prepared to tell you, excuse me, your parents didn't make you. They gave you a body, aren't they kind? They surely did not give you a mind. You've been hearing in this course that your mind isn't your brain. But he's not asking you to believe that. And that's one of the common things we have about spiritual. It's something you're supposed to believe in. Well, just merely believing in something for the Buddha is superstition. It's ignorance, it's intellectual laziness. And that's one of the biggest mistakes we have about religion, about spiritual. That it's something you can't prove, you've got to believe it or not. Well, Buddha just utterly disagrees. And if you start to take this one on board, it really wakes you up, because you realise the onus is on you to listen, think about it, and prove it to be true or not. So Buddha's happy to tell you, he says, your mind isn't the brain. Now, he didn't get that in some vision from somebody. It wasn't revealed to him. He didn't have a dream about it. He's not making it up. Just like if you had Einstein here telling you about his findings about relativity, you know if he had had it in a dream yesterday, you'd chuck him out the door as being some phony. If he says, you better believe what I'm telling you, relativity is true, you chuck him out the door. No. Well, Buddha's exactly like that. He demands you listen, you think about it, and you prove it yourself. And as the Dalai Lama says, if you can prove from your own experience at some point in your progression on your path that Buddha is actually mistaken in what he asserts as the truth, you must reject him. So the point of this is that the onus is on us, you know. Buddha's content. He's found what he considers to be the truth from his own direct experience, and he presents it. So, okay, the way you've been hearing it here is presented in the context of the way Tibetans have been practicing and studying it for, 1,200, 1,300 years or whatever, in the particular lineage coming from, the Tibetan style. Every word, hopefully, in case Jimmy's been lying to you or Mark's been lying to you, but I hope not, every word they've been saying is coming from the lineage of Buddha's teachings, presented step by, from this person all the way down to the present. It is said to be Buddha's findings about the truth. You simply hear it, and then it's up to you to go away and work with it. Or not. I mean, you're the boss here, You don't have to think about Buddhism. That's your call. And you absolutely must not believe it or not. Now, the trouble is we are intellectually lazy and we would rather believe something. It's a lot easier for us. Maybe we believed in a creator and now we think, I think I believe in karma instead. Yeah, that sounds good. But hell realms, I don't believe that. I don't like that one. It's sort of like we go around shopping, We put little things into our kit bag thinking, I believe in karma, but not animals, and no animals this, and maybe not hells. It's just a load of rubbish. It's superstition thinking this way. It's not joking to say that the clarity and the precision and the depth of analysis that we know we have to apply in what we call scientific investigation is exactly the same approach that Buddha takes. This is a big surprise to us. So this, you can see from this approach in this room, it's very much, there's an emphasis on hearing the teachings, listening to Buddha's view. And so the commonest thing for us in the materialist world is we don't see the relationship between listening to Buddha's views and and meditation and having an experience of it. We can't see the relationship, because we have this fixed view in our mind about what we think meditation is, about what we think spiritual is. Okay, maybe I was a bit rude before when I said the views we have are garbage, but I'm sort of not kidding. We have these superstitious ideas. We come along to the East, we go along, we do a course, and we get some kind of good feeling. We get some kind of special experience. We think that's spiritual. But I'm really sorry, it isn't. You are mistaken. If you feel like being angry and you struggle with it and then you decide you won't be angry, that's spiritual. If you sit here in your meditation, you're feeling kind of irritated and annoyed and you work with it, that's spiritual. If you work in your mind, you see that you're depressed and miserable and you know that you can change and you have some optimism, that's spiritual. Being your own therapist is being a spiritual person, and I'm not kidding. So that implies, of course, as one of my friends, and if you don't like swearing, close your ears, I'm about to swear, okay? Say a rude word. Medium rude, not the worst rude. As a friend of mine who's a therapist, who's also a Tibetan Buddhist, she said, practicing is having your hands in your own shit. And she's not joking. This is really the truth. I'm working with some people in the other Gompa over here. Where is it? I forget. Where am I? There. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. They're doing a 3-month retreat, okay? And, I've been doing the sessions with them for the last, week or so. And we've been talking about this whole thing. There they are doing a meditation retreat, silent, for 8 hours, 4 sessions, 2 hours a day, starting at 5:30, eating only 2 meals a day, prostrations every session. It's a meditation retreat. But believe me, it's the toughest work. And I talk to the individuals and they're all talking about the dirt coming out, as Lama Zopa said. A friend of mine did years of retreat one point. And he was distressed out of his mind with waves of rage and anger. He was scared of it. It was so much. And he went to Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And Lama Zopa laughed and laughed. And he said, fantastic. The dirt has to come out. So the point is, the sign of practice is that you start to see your garbage mind. And the very common thing is, when you start to do what's called spiritual, start to look inside, start to be introspective, you know, see your mind, be your own therapist, it is not comfortable. It's not comfortable, you know, because, and then we start to think we're getting worse. But you're not getting worse. It's just that we're noticing what's already been there, but we've never looked properly before, you know. So being spiritual is not necessarily comfortable. It's painful because you're starting to become accountable. The usual materialist, dualistic view of the world is you feel miserable, somebody else caused it. You feel miserable, it's the environment's fault. It's Iraq's fault. It's George Bush's fault. It's your husband's fault. This is the natural view we all have now. Well, Buddha says that view is the philosophy that he calls samsaric. That's what he means by samsara. Living in the philosophy that says, I didn't ask to get born, it's not my fault, and everybody else and everything else and the events in the world are the cause of my suffering, but also the cause of my happiness. So it's like we blame someone for being miserable, but we also blame people for making us happy. It's the same problem. You dump the causes of your happiness onto someone else. We dump the causes of our suffering onto someone else. And this is the tricky bit. I mean, you could just focus on that piece for 10 days because it's so confusing to us, you know. The logic seems so clear. If someone looks mean at you, we think it's reasonable to feel miserable. You know, if someone drops a bomb on you, you think it's reasonable to feel miserable. So first of all, Buddha presents very clearly what he thinks morality is, the very first levels of practice, like junior school. Well, morality for Buddha is something you can establish quite quickly. It's not something coming from the sky. It's not something deemed by him to be the way it is, which it is in Christianity. And I'm not criticising. I am very grateful for my Catholic upbringing. But the view is fundamentally different. Remember, you know, I've been working with people in prison the last 15 years, and I remember having a nice long conversation with a Catholic priest in the sex offenders unit in Western Australia. Very nice priest. And I asked him, what is a sin? So, of course, according to Christianity or Judaism, any philosophy that asserts a creator, a sin, by definition, is going against the will of God. This is very reasonable. So if it is true that we're created by a superior being, then morality is doing what God said. Perfectly reasonable. Well, Buddha doesn't assert a creator. He himself is not a creator. So then Buddha's view of morality sounds the same. Don't harm others, don't kill, don't lie. Sounds the same. But the reason's fundamentally different. He says the reason not to kill or lie or steal, well, there are two things. What defines it as immoral is the simple fact that it harms another. So morality is easy to assess. You just do your market research. Do your market research, ask everybody in this room, do you like being lied to, stolen from, killed, punched in the nose? You will get absolute 100% agreement that no one likes it. Then you can conclude immorality is harming others. In other words, what is immoral is that which harms others. Buddha happens to be a messenger, that's all, and presents it to us. So first, having established this, then we can all agree dropping bombs isn't cool. Punching people in the nose isn't cool. But then there's how we deal with that, and that's Buddha's unique approach. This is his expertise. This is his emphasis on the mind. He's like saying, excuse me, Robina, just because Fred punches you in the nose is no reason to be angry. But he also says, just because Mary gives you $100, you know, is no reason to think that she's a nice person. It's Aircell telling me something. They send you messages every 30 seconds. My little phone here. So the Buddha's point is this, you know, that the main cause of my happiness, it's really simple. A 5-year-old could repeat this. The main cause of my happiness is in my mind. The main cause of my suffering is in my mind. These are not difficult words to say, but they are mind-blowing. And getting our head around this is the central practice of being a Buddhist, is the unique approach of the Buddha. The absolutely unique approach. This view of we can be accountable and we can change how we think and it's up to us to interpret the world, it's very common. But this is Buddha's specific thing, and he follows it through all the way with his view of what mind is. That your consciousness, as you've been hearing no doubt, is not your brain. It is not made by a creator. It is not given to you by mummy or daddy. Your consciousness is not physical, and it's its own entity. It is like a river of mental moments. You've got a body and you've got a mind. You could track your body from now back to when you popped out your mummy's womb. You could also track your mind if you had perfect enough memory. You could observe your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, which are not your body. Yes, there's an intimate relationship between body and mind. No discussion, no argument there. But they are absolutely separate entities. So with introspection, with learning of meditative techniques, one can learn, as I'm saying, to be your own therapist, to be aware of your mind to degrees of subtlety that we wouldn't even believe are possible in Western psychology. Buddha is so radical in the way he says we can go into our minds and observe the thoughts and feelings and learn to unravel what's inside there, learn to identify what's inside there, and learn to have control over what is inside there. Really. And also we can learn to track back our thoughts and feelings, the evolution of our anger, the evolution of our depression. That the main cause of all of this is not the external event. The external event, of course it plays a role. There are lots of conditions that have to come together to have any experience. The punch is one, the $100 gift is another, but they're merely secondary causes, which is a big shock to us. Because our philosophical view now, the one of samsaric, says that they're the main cause. And so we don't think we have any choice. If you punch me in the nose, of course I'm angry, we will say. But Buddha says, don't be ridiculous. The mind's yours, baby. A punch is only your body. My kung fu teacher used to say when we're into our 30th push-up on our knuckles, it's only your body, he'll say. This is exactly the point. So this is a radical point. Now, this doesn't deny, as I'm pointing out, that punching is not cool. But the Buddha says, that's their problem. Now let's look at yours. Yours is your mind. Yours is your anger. And that you can learn to work with. And I tell you, the people we work with in prison, they get this one. They absolutely get this one. Some of the people we know in prison are amazing practitioners of exactly this. They live in these garbage dumps, where they're seen as like animals. And some of them have become the most amazing practitioners. In other words, realizing they cannot open that door. They cannot get those guards to like them. They cannot stop the prosecutors and the juries and the people from thinking they're monsters. But they can change their minds. They can change the way they think, the way they feel. I remember reading a book. I didn't meet this woman. Some woman in Florida who was, accused of murder, death row, 17 years, eventually was seen to be free, seen to be innocent, and got out. So from the beginning, she got this one. She was treated like an animal. She knew she was innocent. She did everything she could to get free, and she finally managed. But in that period, she said, I decided they couldn't take my mind away from me. That's mine. So when you're up against the wall, when you cannot change the external circumstance, that's when you can really get this one. But this is what being a Buddhist means. This is the unique characteristic of being a Buddhist. Not being mindful. I'm not trying to be rude now. Mindfulness is great. But we make it all holy-woly, And a reminder, again, remember Rinpoche said, thieves need it. So it ain't holy in its nature. It's just a quality you can use to help you be your own therapist. Take responsibility. Be accountable for your own mind, for what's inside you. So, of course, this is really tricky, because then we go to the other extreme and we think, oh, well, when someone comes along to rape me, I'll go, oh, well, that's their problem. This is my problem. I'm angry while I'm getting raped, No, that's extreme. Get the hell out of the maniac's way if you can. They're crazy. If you can. But we're such junkies. We're such kind of victims. This is a really good way of talking about ego, Lama Yeshe would say that ego is the self-pity me. The poor me. And the more you look into your mind, the more you observe your depression, your fears, your jealousy, your low self-esteem, your anger, your arrogance, your pride, the attachment, you're going to see it's the feeling of victim, the feeling of poor me. You see it, you really see it. But the thing is, when we're caught up in that, We truly do feel a victim of circumstances. We truly do believe we don't have a choice. If someone harms me, of course I'm angry. Of course I'm fearful, we'll say. We don't believe there's a possibility of not being this. So it's huge, it's radical to say you don't have to be angry if someone's mean to you. You don't have to be jealous if your boyfriend looks at someone else. But that doesn't mean you don't realise he's doing a load of rubbish and you say, see you later, mate, I'm leaving. Nothing wrong with that. So, you know, seeing that your mind is is where everything is going on, this is where the workshop is, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says. Realising that what's happening inside you is the source of what's going on for you. This doesn't mean you put up with a boyfriend who treats you like garbage. Now, if you're in prison, you don't have a choice. Like my friends who, you know, have to get up at 4 in the morning to meditate because when they wake up at 7 and 8 in the morning, 800 people screaming and shouting, oh, excuse me, people, I'm trying to meditate. Oh, I can't meditate, there's too much noise. They don't say that because they don't have a choice. And they realise they can work on their minds. So the thing is, working on your mind, being accountable, noticing your own jealousy, your own fears, your own depression, your own hurt. It doesn't mean you put up with garbage out there. If a person's going to come along and rape you, get the hell out of their way, if you can. If your boyfriend's cheating on you and lying to you, excuse me, don't put up with it. See you later, boy. Leave him. Nothing wrong. Because, again, the thing is, if we hear this business of your mind is the main problem, we become another type of victim. We become passive and think putting up with things is practice. No, that's called passivity. That's horrible. The consequence of being accountable is you become self-respectful. So you wouldn't put up with people's mistreatment of you if you can change it. You'd say, thanks a lot. I'd prefer you don't hit me and punch me in the nose, Fred. But if Fred keeps going, you'll say, okay, sweetheart, I have to leave. You don't blame him, you know he's got a problem, but you realise it's not appropriate to stick around Fred who abuses you. There's nothing wrong with that. It's appropriate. That would be the consequence of a person who's working on their own mind. The irony of victim mentality is that, you know, you live with Fred who harms you and then you go gossip about him to everybody else, but you run back like a moth to a flame, happily being a victim, you know, because you don't think you've got any control over things. So one of the consequences, as I'm saying, of giving up delusions, of giving up ego, is you become more powerful, more content, more wise, more clear, more courageous, more self-confident. That's a fact. So it's what I'm getting at partly here too, it's so important to interpret all this stuff properly. The way we misinterpret the Buddha's teachings is grotesque, you know. Making it all holy-woly, spiritual la-di-da in the sky, all to do with mindful, patient, quiet, being with a little sort of grin on your face, walking slowly. It's just, excuse me, it's just rubbish. According to that definition, Dalai Lama's not a Buddhist. He talks fast, he walks fast, he's strong, he's firm with people, he makes things happen, he's a control freak. You see him in a press conference, he runs everybody, he's amazing. He's a great Buddhist, you know, he's a great example. Cuts through all the nonsense we have, the views we think of what a Buddhist is, you know. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. You can maybe ask me some questions, I suppose. There's 30 minutes of some ideas, okay? Give me some questions now, please. Anybody got any questions? Anything at all that's come up from Jimmy's teachings, from Mark's meditations? I've been hearing rumblings of people not being satisfied and don't like analytical meditation and don't like this and too much that and blah, blah, blah. So bring up all your junk. Come on, I like junk. Bring it up. Yes?
All right, I'm going to jump in there.
Come on then. Yep.
So I guess, thanks for taking my question. I have 2 questions about the same topic, karma and cyclic existence. One, where is the proof? We talk about proof
Yep.
of this really being a reality. And then the second piece is, coming from a good Catholic upbringing myself, I'm having a hard time getting my head around why it's important to think that something I did in 8 lifetimes ago, or something that a seed that's going to germinate, that's going to affect something in 5 lifetimes from now, versus being a bodhicitta in this lifetime, focusing on this lifetime
Right.
instead of worrying so much about what happened 17 lifetimes ago.
Who's suggesting you should worry so much about it? I think that's where you're exaggerating, aren't you? The point here is, the teaching in this is that everything is interdependent. So if you were a great scientist or a great botanist, you would not just say, I'm just going to focus on today, and I don't care what came before, and I don't care what comes in front. That's not true. If you're a botanist, the bigger and more long-term your view, the better the botanist. It's cause and effect, because we all know everything you do today is a direct result of what you did yesterday, day before, and every single thing you do today in your garden will absolutely determine what happens in the future. And given that a botanist is planting seeds on the basis of what you want in the future, this is cause and effect. It's something we know already. If you're a pianist, if you're any kind of scientist, if you're a technological person, you're thinking of cause and effect, the implications of this upon this, upon this, upon this. So it's completely something we understand. We apply it. We call it scientific. But because we're calling it religion, we think it sounds superstition, you know. That's the answer to your second point, if that's helpful food for thought, is it, that point, just for a moment?
Yeah, it is. Going a little bit deeper, though, is
well, you want to go deeper. I just went very deep.
You did go deep. That
you
was
decide
good.
You want to go deeper, that's cool.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Then? Being a dog or getting a lower existence or
being what?
A good rebirth or possibly being an animal in a past lifetime or becoming an animal. Where's the scientific in that?
Absolutely the scientific. If it can't be proved as true, then like the Dalai Lama says, you must reject it. So your question is not so much where's the proof, but how do I go about proving it? Is that your question? Is that your question? How do I go about proving it?
Yeah, because...
Hang on a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Just answer my question. Is that your question? Please, Robina, tell me how I go about proving what Buddha says to be true. Is that your question?
Please, Robina, help me to prove what the...
No. How do I go about... Because this is the point. We go, oh, well, relativity, that's scientific. Excuse me, have you proved relativity lately? I bet you haven't. So we say, oh, but it is scientific. Well, honey, baby, it's someone else's science. And we are prepared to believe in it because we think, you know, we mostly walk around believing in everything. We haven't proved anything for ourselves. Nope. So first point is this. So let's just really be realistic. So how do I prove karma to be true? Well, I will tell you.
Thank you.
You first have to listen to the entire package. Okay. You have to take it, like any decent scientist, in order to listen to it, you've got to take it as a hypothesis. You must open your mind to it, and you must listen carefully to what Buddha says is the truth. You have to have enough patience and humility, I mean, only if you want to completely go into it, to listen to the hypothesis, take it as a hypothesis. Your mind is not physical, karma is the law of cause and effect, this is this, that is this. All the things that he says are the way the universe is. You have to listen to this. That's first. Then you have to think about it intellectually. And you could even prove it all really coherently and make it a very excellent, coherent, intellectual package. You could do that very comfortably and even teach it to someone else. Then experientially is the point. But first you've got to be conceptually confident, conceptually coherent. And if it's a reasonable system, it will be this. Then what you do is, given that Buddha says your consciousness is not physical, your consciousness is a continuity of mental moments, but also your consciousness has the capacity to go way beyond this gross level of conceptuality. As far as Buddha's concerned, this is the tip of the iceberg. Okay, one of these many conferences that were held called Mind and Life. There's this organisation been around for 20 plus years now. And they're amazing conferences with the Dalai Lama and his mob and all the materialists, okay? And there's some brilliant stuff coming out of all these conferences all over the world. They're fantastic. And one of them in 2003, the topic was the capacity of the human mind to concentrate. So, okay, the materialists, there they were, taking their definition of whatever mind is and what they mean by concentration. Their findings were that maybe we could concentrate for 5 or 6 seconds, however they defined it. Cool. The Buddha and his lot, Dalai Lama, and his lot, based upon their view of what consciousness is, which goes to a far more refined, subtle level, which I'll describe in a moment, and then based upon their findings from people's own direct experiences over the last 2,000 or so years, that one could concentrate for months on end. There's quite a difference there, wouldn't you agree? So clearly, we've got radically different views of the word mind here. So in order for you to even go into what Buddha says, you've got to take this as your hypothesis. You can't possibly prove something until you hypothesize it, until you act as if it is this. Then you think about it, and then with your experience, you then have to get what they call single-pointed concentration. Now, the Buddha would say that the gross level of mind, which is what we would think of as conceptuality and the sensory experiences, which is all we posit as existing in the materialist world, with absolute certainty, this is for the Buddha the grossest tip of the iceberg, that the mind can go to these profoundly more subtle levels where necessarily these levels of cognition, which is the function of mind, don't depend upon the brain for their function, where one has the capacity to see past and future, which is called clairvoyance, where one has absolute control over the mind, where you can be single-pointed. This is experience from thousands of years of thousands of meditators. So the evidence is there, but in the end, the evidence of Einstein's there too, but to make it your experience, you have to go into that and prove to be true. It is at that point, when you have clairvoyance, which Buddha says we're all capable of, nothing big deal, you will then prove it yourself. But you've got to first have the conceptual package and have the patience to want to listen to it, but then also to see, as I'm saying before, the experiential implications of this philosophy. Now, we mightn't have the patience to do this, and maybe we don't even want to, and that's cool, you know. It really is. But the thing to take to take it as a hypothesis, as if. And that's the only way you can look at something. Like if you're educated as you know, what's that word for the Western medicine? Allopathic, is that the right word? Okay, you've educated in this for 20 years, and we know the world. I mean, my sister and my brother are chiropractors, and the cynicism still from the traditional medical tradition, because it's a completely other system, you know. So you know yourself you'd have to have a mind open enough to even want to listen to a chiropractor talk, to even want to listen to an acupuncturist. And then in order to prove whether acupuncture is true or not, you can't keep with your allopathic view, because acupuncture is a load of garbage if you have an allopathic view. You've got to separate yourself, move into another system, learn it deeply, take it as a hypothesis, and then look into it. So it's quite a big deal, really. So part of our struggle is that we keep holding on to our view of, well, the mind is the brain, and this is true. So, of course, you're going to split your brain in half when you hear Buddha's wacky ideas about God realms and hell realms. It seems the weirdest stuff you've ever heard, you know. And again, the fundamental point in Buddhism, it is either true or it ain't. Don't believe a word of it. And if you can't prove it, if you can disprove it from your own direct experience, which means maybe many years of practice, if you've got the patience, then you must reject it. As Dalai Lama said, Buddha, you prove him wrong, then he is wrong. See you later, Buddha. Bye-bye. I'm off. This is the approach to take, which means you've got to sort of have a bit of excitement to want to do it, you know. If you just want to kind of be a bit calmer and do mindfulness meditation, I'm not complaining. Go for it, you know. But for me, I've always, since a little girl, I was a Catholic, as I said, I've always wanted the big picture. I always wanted to know what and why and who and God and this and that. And so I get great pleasure out of looking into the big picture, you know, and want to try and find the experiential implication of it. And the fact of the matter is, if there isn't a direct experiential implication of every one of these philosophical views, then it, again, a medium swearing word, it's just wanking. It's a load of rubbish. It's wasting time. It's intellectual crap. You might as well throw it in the bin. Are we communicating here? Are we communicating?
We're communicating.
Food for thought? Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Want to be sworn at?
Good luck.
Yep.
Okay, this is also, I guess, a two-part related question.
Okay, honey.
Okay. Well, first, I have difficulty with not thinking that there's a designer of life.
Start that sentence again.
I have difficulty thinking that life wasn't designed.
Okay, so you're a creator person. I'm not complaining, but you like the idea of a creator, yeah? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Good, go for it.
And then also of there not being a first cause.
Okay.
So.
Well, no, you don't have a problem with that because you know very well that God is not got a cause. So you don't mind the idea of no first cause when it comes to God. You just don't mind the idea of first cause when it comes to ordinary things.
Yes.
You get my point? Because everybody who believes in a creator absolutely knows there's no first cause. So Buddha just applies that to everything. No big deal.
Okay, so if there is no first cause in this infinite past
That's
time,
right, baby.
then
Perfect.
shouldn't by now, if there's infinite past, shouldn't we all be enlightened by now?
Oh, only if you've done the work.
But
Only if you've actually consciously changed your mind.
But given an infinite amount of time, wouldn't we all have done that?
Well, there's the proof. Here's the proof, sweetie. Look at the world. Look at the world. It doesn't follow because you... Okay, Buddha would say, for example, your mind is beginningless. Okay, first of all, he says there's no first cause because the simple meaning of cause implies effect. So how can you... So the word first cause is illogical. Those two words contradict each other. Because if you have something that... 1 second you have nothing, and then next second you have something. This is an impossible. But you're suggesting God... This is the Buddhist view of it. You know, the word beginningless. You'd accept that a creator is beginningless, right? So there is no cause of... There's no first cause when it comes to God because God has always been there. Well, Buddha says the same, but it's not something special. Do you get my point? So that's just intellectually a point. That consciousness is yours and mine and the dogs and the rats and Hitler's are beginningless continuities of mental moments. So first of all, Buddha applies this concept of beginningless to everything, not as a special thing to a creator, first. Second, the idea of first cause is impossible. Like I said, those words contradict each other. The meaning of cause implies effect. So that thing that's a cause is the effect of a previous cause. So just intellectually, it's just not feasible to talk about a first cause. Second point, just for the moment. But then the next one is the business of why. You see, Buddha says you don't need a creator. If you posit that what's your name?
Jordan.
Who?
Jordan.
Sweetie, you have to speak Australian. I can't hear you.
Jordan.
Yes. What did you say?
About the design?
No, about your name. You said Jordan, did you?
Jordan.
Oh, that's Jordan. Are you American? I mean, I've been living in America 15 years, but I still sound Australian, don't I? Jordan. Okay, Jordan. Listen, baby. So if we just say Jordan's consciousness, you just hypothesize it. You're an intelligent guy. It's not a problem, you know. This continuity of thoughts and feelings go back and back and back, and you get to the first second of conception. And we're taking as our hypothesis here the logic of cause and effect. So this moment of Jordan's consciousness, where does it come from? Well, guess what? The previous moment. Now you track it back to when you popped out of Jordan's mummy's womb, squalling, you know. Well, maybe Jordan's consciousness began then. No, because if it's existing at that moment, where did it come from? A previous moment. Then you track back 9 months in the womb, and then you get to the moment of conception, when the Christians would say that God put your soul there, or the materialists would say when the egg and sperm just stay together. But the Buddha would say when the consciousness from a previous moment zapped into that egg and sperm and caused it to become alive and a person. So then you think, well, maybe my consciousness, Jordan's consciousness began the moment before conception. Well, no, if it existed then, where did it come from? The moment before. And then you go back 1,000 years. Well, maybe it began then. No, if it existed then, where did it come from? Guess what? The previous moment. Go back 1,000,000 years. Well, maybe it began then. Well, if it existed then, where did it come from? Guess what? The previous moment. Now, we mightn't like this idea. You know, as one Lama said, we want a beginning. We think it's outrageous there's no beginning. We get upset to think there's no beginning. But Buddha says, what do you want a beginning for? It's completely a projection. It's an over-exaggeration of something. We want there to be a beginning. But it's absurd if you posit the simple logic of cause and effect. In this sense that everything has its own entity and the main cause of anything is something similar to it the split second before. So from this point of view, and it's not complicated, you're an intelligent person. You can hypothesize this easily. But emotionally, we don't want to for some interesting reason, you know. You get my point?
Yes.
Here.
Yeah, I do.
That's how you'd track it, you know. And you'd be very kind of rigorous with yourself doing this in a meditation. And you've got to want to do it, to keep going like. And so you can't find a first moment. Now, I agree, it's an insane idea. I mean, we talk about not remembering a past life. Don't be ridiculous. You don't remember most of today. Jordan, if you had to write down everything and be accountable since you woke up, you'd be a miserable failure. 99% of today is lost in our memory. So, I mean, it's like the idea that we don't remember it is not a logical reason for there not being something existing. So this is one of the first things to do. So that the point is also here, what's your name over there? Charlie. Another Jordan. What does he say? Who? Charlie. Who?
Charlie.
Charlie. Charlie and Gordon and Jordan. Charlie and Jordan. Charlie and Jordan. Okay. When I had to ask for hot water when I was living in California, and I'd say, "Can I have a glass of hot water, please?" "I beg your pardon." Then I'd have to go, I'd always just stop and I'd go, "Hot water." "Oh, I see," they'd say. Or, "I want butter on my toast." "You want what?" "Butter." Charlie and Jordan. Okay, now we're communicating. So listen, Charlie's point, about kind of whatever his point was, I forget now. But the experiential implication of it all, what's the point? 17 lives ago, a God realm, or 22 lives in the future, a hell realm, sure. So the thing is, if this is, we have to hypothesize, if this is the way reality is, we're giving Buddha a go here until we prove him as wrong, if we want to, right? Then we've got to see the experiential implication of there being no creator. And as you say, a design. That's really interesting. Buddha's not arguing that with there being no design. But he says, what he says designs things is every split second of every thought, every feeling, every word, and every action of every sentient being. So you, Jordan, are the creator of your body, your life, your mind. There is a design. It's just that we didn't do it with a big plan. There's no big architect in the sky type designer. But every individual being is necessarily the creator of their own self. But not in the big magic kind of wand sense of creator, but in the organic sense of every split second that Jordan thinks and does and says something, he is programming Jordan. Listen, you know very well, if you sit down at the piano and you become a brilliant pianist, who has created that pianist? You're the main cause, would you not agree? Your hard work every single day. Yes, you thank Mozart for his good music, and you thank Mr. Steinway for his nice piano, and you thank your good teacher, but they are the secondary causes. The fundamental creator of Jordan's music is Jordan's hard work. Well, Buddha says you are the fruit of your past work, good or bad. Well, so is a hell being, so is a giraffe, so is a bird. Each of us is the fruit of our own past actions, and every split second of every thought is the meaning of the word karma. The word karma means action, and it's actually equivalent to the word intention. So this is the creative principle for the Buddha. But it's not just the big architect in the sky idea. Buddha says that's an over-exaggeration. Now, he's not being rude. If you listen to Buddha's view about omniscience, he agrees in the concept of omniscience, but just not a person called a creator. He would say that's the natural potential of every consciousness. He says infinite capacity for compassion for countless sentient beings, that's the capacity for every mind. He says the capacity to be absolutely powerful and do whatever needs to be done to benefit sentient beings, that's just not a creator's job, that's the job of every individual being. So, you could argue omniscience sounds the same as God, but the Buddha would not put the job of creator onto an omniscient being, that's all. Because he says we don't need one, because we create ourselves, moment by moment,
I agree that we create ourselves mentally, but how about...
I don't want you to believe anything, Jordan. I'm not going to be argumentative on purpose. You're suggesting that's possible, is what you're saying.
Oh, I totally agree. No,
You've got to prove something first. Go on.
But then I look at the human body and
right.
How is that? It seemed like there's some intelligence that designed that.
But why? Okay, I'll tell you the Buddhist view. Shall I give you a little sort of brief explanation? Am I talking fast enough? I'm running out of time, It's only 4:15. How long have I got here? Oh, we've got, an hour and 45 minutes. Blimey, can you take it? Okay, listen. This is the Buddha's view. We have two types of phenomena in the universe, only two: matter and minds. Matter, in the old-fashioned, like in the Galileo days, they still agree that it's made up of the four elements: earth, air, fire, water. So the elements of the external universe are exactly the same as these elements here. The same as the elements in an elephant's body and a little ant's body. Whatever is material in this little model that we're discussing here is the four elements. Now, the Buddha would say the four elements have absolutely no power from their own side. They too are beginningless. Why do you want a beginning? This universe, as the Dalai Lama said one time, Big Bang, no problem. Just not the first Big Bang, that's all. So at some point you can locate the beginning of what we call this planet and this whatever it's called. And at that point there would have been maybe the very subtle wind energy, which is the four elements subsumed down to the subtle wind energy. And then due to certain conditions, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze at some point. Oh, nearly did. Okay, the elements are just the existing. And then you've got the consciousness existing. Now, in the more subtle teachings, in the more advanced teachings in Buddhism called Buddhist Tantra, which is the same model they use in Tibetan medical system. They talk about we have consciousness, we have the subtle consciousness, and then we have very subtle consciousness. And at each level, it's inextricably linked to, inextricably linked to a level of physicality. So clearly here at this gross level, we've got gross consciousness, which is conceptuality and sensory, which absolutely exists in dependence upon a decent working body and a decent working nervous system and a decent working brain, you know. If you cut my eyeballs out, you don't have eye consciousness, you know. So there's consciousness, which is not physical, which gives life to the body, gives life to this physical stuff, these four elements. So then when you die, Jordan goes through this process. I don't know if Jimmy's gone through the death process with you people, has he? No, obviously not. So there's this way they describe that what happens at the time of death. And you get to the very subtle consciousness when it's time for, when all the grosser manifestations of your physicality have completely ceased. Your consciousness has gone to the very subtle level. Unless you're a great meditator, you're not aware of this at this point, you're unconscious. And then at that very subtle level, there's very subtle consciousness, which is like the repository, if you like, of every single tiny imprint of everything Jordan has ever said and done and thought, because that's the karmic process. And then it's linked inextricably with the subtle wind energy. So this subtle wind energy and the subtle mind are together, and then they're programmed. By the time you stop breathing, the Buddhists would say you're totally programmed for next life. Your consciousness is propelled by your past actions, and this is a natural thing we understand. You know, your ability to play music, if you've been doing it for 20 years, you sit at the piano, your ability to whiz your fingers up and down that piano is dependent upon your past 20 years of hard work, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree? So you're propelled by the force of your past actions. You'd say that. Well, the same with morality. If you've practiced, the Buddha would assert that you have practiced in the past morality, generosity, goodness, being kind to others. That's how come at the time of a past death, the very subtle consciousness, not more than 7 weeks before you zapped into your mummy's new womb, Jordan's mummy, lying there with her daddy, unless you were fertilised in a petri dish or something. You know, that your consciousness was, by the time it left the past body, you are programmed already. We can deduce that you must have practiced a lot of morality, non-harming, non-lying, really good person, probably practiced in the context of a wish to do it, which is spiritual practice. You programmed this consciousness, then you died, gradually went through this process, got down to the very subtle level, and your very subtle wind energy there together, and it's programmed, it's propelled, just goes zap. And all sorts of things happen, and then eventually you zap, not very much later, into your new mummy's womb. Okay, there's lots of things to say here, but clearly no time. So the very subtle wind and the very subtle consciousness are programmed to take a shape called a human form. Now this shape, Buddha says, is created by actions. If we could analyse a lion, we look at a lion, look at its fingers, look at its claws. They are made to rip the guts out of buffaloes for breakfast. Now, I used to have long red nails when I was a lady with long hair and red lipstick. I couldn't have ripped out the guts of a buffalo. They were too sensitive. As the Dalai Lama said, these hands are made for affection. They're soft, you know. Okay, we use them to press buttons to kill people, I agree, because we have clever minds. But this body, the Buddha would say, is the product of eons of types of states of mind that literally cause the winds to go into a certain shape, what we call human. A lion is that. A lion is a ready-made killing machine. I don't dislike lions, but look at its behaviour. And it's got a body that goes with it. Why do you have big claws like a hawk? Not to be affectionate with. Believe me. So our bodies are the product of our minds. Our minds run the elements. There's a type of karma called environmental karma, which means the way the environment behaves is not God's actions, is not merely the actions of the environment itself, is the fruit of eons of karmic actions of all the individual beings who experience this environment. Now, right now, we can say this environment's behaving relatively harmoniously, isn't it? It's not flooding down buckets of rain, it's not erupting in an earthquake. You know, this is the result of harmonious actions. If your body behaves nicely and isn't sick, it's the result of morality. If you get very sick and have terrible things happen, the environment makes you ill, or you eat peanuts and you die, this is the result of immorality. It's not judgment. Nobody's up there pulling the strings. It's like if you smoke cigarettes, you get cancer. No one thinks it's the doctor punishing you. That's called superstition. It's just a natural consequence, you know. So everything is a consequence of actions. The way the elements behave, including our own body, are the consequence of minds doing and saying and thinking things. So it's in this literal way that Buddha says we're our own creator, you know. You don't need a big creator. So yes, the bodies are really clever. We've been doing it for eons, baby. So a lion's body's clever, but that's the result of their actions too. Anyway, it's a different view, I agree, but this is the way you would think as a Buddhist, to try and get your head around how this is possible, hypothesising the points that I've just made, you know.
Okay, so the bodies were designed over time.
Pardon?
Our bodies were designed over time.
There you go, precisely. Perfect way to put it. It's like, karma is like personal evolution. Literally, like that. It's like personal evolution, yeah.
Okay, and just one more, then who designed karma?
Darling, it's beginningless too. What do you want to see? You're a creator person. Now, Jordan, I'm not joking here. Maybe you will discover that is, as they say in Buddhists, that might be your lineage. So maybe in the end you might develop even more faith in a creator. All power to you, Jordan. That's for you to find out. Because that might be the one that is right for you. And I mean, you know, that for you to find out if it's true or not, that's another discussion. But one of our friends on death row in Texas, he asked me to come and help him die. You know, they wouldn't let me because I'm a Buddhist. You don't believe in God, they said. You're not a religious person. So anyway, we couldn't do it. But he ended up not dying. They commuted him to life sentence or something. But I remember he decided he'd stop being a Buddhist, so he wrote to us. Well, we wrote to him back. Well, you know, lots of love to you. He became a Christian or something, or a Muslim, I forget. I'm happy. Good on you, you know. We've got to find what works for us, and it's up to us. The onus is on us, you know. So maybe you're a creator person, Jordan, but you're doing the right thing. You're giving it some thought. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Yes. Give the man the mic. Sam. That sounds reasonable. Sam, I can handle that.
Yeah. One syllable, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Is your mic on, darling?
I think it should be now.
Good. Go on.
I guess these are two practical questions, so less about the philosophy
just
side.
to be argumentative.
True.
If this wasn't
Okay.
practical, I'm just going to be argumentative.
That's fair.
If this weren't practical, I don't want to know about it. But never mind, come on.
Okay.
You mean
True.
short-term practical?
Yes.
Good, okay.
The first one is about whether we should ever choose suffering for the sake of basically strengthening our mind.
Yes, I understand.
So
Good question. Ask Lance Armstrong. What would be his answer? Yes. Look at the people. Look at sports people. Look at athletes. Unbelievable effort, the torture they go through to perfect themselves in their field. So that's what the great bodhisattvas do. Yeah, they choose suffering, but they've got a very happy mind about it, and they can see that it's going to smash ego. But clearly, you do it according to your level, don't you? If you try to do the mountains that Lance Armstrong does, you'll kill yourself. Okay. So according to your level, there's a way of seeing suffering as brilliant, but not the martyr ego mind. That's disgusting. Do you understand the difference?
Yes.
Good.
But so living with maybe without AC. Or,
What, sweetheart?
Well, I've been spending a lot of time, down in the lower parts of India where it's a little hotter than here. And,
Exactly.
So living without AC.
No, you see, that kind of thing, okay, if you like the heat. I remember a friend of mine lived in Cairns in Queensland where just 99 degrees humidity and stinking hot. He loved the sweat. But excuse me, if I'm going to live in Cairns, I'm going to have air conditioning, okay? But the trick is, if you can't get it, you're still happy. That's the trick. Nothing wrong with getting a chocolate cake. But if you have a mental breakdown when carrot cake comes, that proves you've got a problem. That's the point. Nothing wrong with being happy and having nice things. Pardon? Huh? Slowly. Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. I beg your pardon. Okay. There's nothing wrong with getting what you want. That's fantastic. Okay, if you're going to be really advanced about it, you'll do it for the sake of others. You'll remember your motivation. But the key is, when you don't get it, that you can stay stable and content. Do you get? That's really the point. So don't worry about choosing suffering. Choose AC. But if you can't get it or it turns off, then be happy then. That's real proof of practice.
And so you'd say then that there are enough opportunities in life for us to develop
problems.
that sort of mental strength that we don't need to choose suffering.
Precisely, sweetheart. I mean, count your blessings. Use everything you can get that's pleasant. But the key is, if you don't get it or it changes, which it will, be content then. That's the one. Do you get my point?
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Good.
And so the second question, following the trend here, is whether we should ever... So your definition for morality was basically anything that is bad for another being.
That which harms another is
Yes.
a definition of morality, yeah. Yep.
So is there any instance in which we should take what might be seen as bad means toward good ends?
Give me an example.
Killing one for the sake of 1,000.
Oh, I see, okay. Well, this gets us into... There's 2 points here, okay. First point, the very first level of practice, junior school, Buddha's asking us to basically zip our lip and keep our hands to ourselves. Don't harm others. Play safe. Okay? Now, so the definition there of what is moral is something that... Well, immoral is that which harms another, so you refrain from doing it. But there's a point here. The reason at the beginning to refrain from doing it is not compassion, is not because you don't want to harm others. This is a really important point, is because it will harm you. This is the fundamental point about karma, and we understand this when it comes to ordinary things like playing music, smoking cigarettes, eating food. We know there are consequences to ourself of everything we do, say and think. Everything we do and say. Wouldn't you agree? If it comes to music, if you don't play piano, you won't become a musician. If you smoke cigarettes, you might get cancer. If you overeat chocolate cake and sugar, you'll get fat and sick. So we get the idea of consequences to ourselves of our actions. So the consequence of this is we become accountable, don't we? You agree, my point. So this is the point about karma. And this is the Buddhist practice of morality. So using as my definition, a bad action is one that harms another. At my first level of practice, Buddha would get me to not do it, not for the sake of the other yet. That's advanced. That's university, compassion. It's because Buddha says, Robina, everything you do will bring consequences to you. And if we analyse what is in our mind, and this is now getting to your question, so there's one is, in general, bad actions are that which harm other. But we've got to look into what makes us do bad actions, don't we? How come there existence of bad actions in the first place? And it's fairly evident if we look into the mind of a person who kills, it ain't out of compassion, generally speaking. Wouldn't you agree? The evolution of the action called killing over centuries is either for attachment, you kill the fish because you want to eat it, or because of anger, because you don't like that person. Broadly speaking, wouldn't you agree that's how it is in the world? Broadly speaking. This is what we mean by killing. Because it's anger in the mind, you lash out and you kill somebody. So there's 2 things again. One is the action, one is the killing harms another, but 2 is there's me doing the killing, and therefore we've got to look at the karma I create when I kill. Now this gets us to your question. So just because I kill somebody doesn't mean I create negative karma. And let's look at this. Equally, just because I give this man $100 doesn't mean that I'm creating good karma. So we can define morality as giving somebody something, and we can define immorality as harming. That is never argued with. But just because you do them doesn't follow you create good or bad karma. And this gets us to motivation. So normally speaking, what motivates killing is anger. You'd say that, broadly speaking. But, so your question, you're indicating, is it possible to kill with not anger in your mind? Yeah? So the compassion would be for whom? The person you're killing or 100 other people? What's your compassion there for?
I guess for the 100 other people.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you're thinking if you kill this person, it'll benefit 100 other people. You can say that. Well,
From
you
a
could
utility
say,
standpoint.
okay, the Buddhist view would be that that's not enough to make it a positive action. Okay, there's two things here. Again, listen, there's two things. One is the karma you personally, Sam, create, right? So that has got nothing to do with anybody else. So you could have an ant on your kitchen sink and you don't even see it. But the ant dies a terrible death when you cut it in half with the lettuce and then it goes down the sink, its poor little body, you know. The ant really suffered, right? But if you have no intention, they would argue there is no karma because intention equals karma. You're sitting there compassionately thinking about your friend who you're making a salad for. So in your mind, there is no negativity, there is no anger, there's no wish to harm, but nevertheless your actions actually harmed an ant, right? So there is an ant that suffered, but it can be that you can be the cause of this but not create negative karma. You can see how this is possible, can't you? Equally, you could see the ant and you can see that its little legs are mangled, and your little heart can well up with compassion. Oh, the poor little ant, I'm so sorry. And you can think the best thing to do is kill it. Now, you might be wrong, you might be right. That's another discussion. But you could kill the ant with compassion, couldn't you? And that's compassion for the ant, right? So that another discussion whether it does benefit, that's something else. So you can see what arises in your mind is the determining factor of the karma you create. It's a super personal thing. So the ant suffered, you didn't create any karma at all. The ant suffered, you created even good karma because you had such compassion. So that's possible. Now, the action you're suggesting is you kill this person because you have compassion for 100 other people. Well, may I suggest, first of all, that's the usual reason most people have wars. George Bush drops bombs on Iraq because he wants to help his people. And Osama bin Laden, whom I really am convinced has enormous compassion for his people. He sacrifices his life for his people. But hey, so I don't think that's enough to justify it as a virtuous action. So the first point, it might be beneficial if the result actually is that the world is a better place as a result of this. But unless we have the wisdom to know this, your action isn't necessarily virtuous at all. And wisdom is the key there. So motivation is enough for you to create good karma. It doesn't follow that other people get benefit. So the best action of all is one that is you doing it with compassion, but you have the wisdom to know that it really will bring the benefit that you want. That's a perfect action. And that's a tricky thing. Are you seeing my point?
Yeah, it sounds like motivation isn't actually enough. I mean, that
motivation's good. No, motivation's good for you, but it didn't help the ant at all. The ant probably left its body and went to a lower realm and got another ant body. So you didn't help the ant at all.
Well, does that mean Osama bin Laden and George Bush have accumulated good karma?
No, it doesn't follow, because I'm saying, this is my point there, I didn't make it clear enough. They've got compassion for their people, but hey, they have anger for the other people. And so their motivation is mostly anger. Oh, I'd certainly say Osama bin Laden. They see it as good. The more infidels die, the better. That is not virtue. I'm sorry. Nobody in their right mind can think that's virtue. That's insane. They want to harm others, thinking it's virtue. So that's called anger. And anybody, you look at any picture of any demonstration of fundamentalists, any kind of fundamentalist, hey, what you're seeing is raging anger. You can't call that compassion. And that's the compassion most of us have. You see somebody harming a little dog, you instantly try to find, you want to get mad at the guy. So our compassion now turns into anger. It's not helpful. You know, we see the universe is suffering environmentally and we get mad at old BP and go and scream and shout and yell and want them all to go to hell, you know. That's not virtue. I remember when I was an old lefty myself, political activist, I had compassion for the world. I did want the world to be a better place, but I had the philosophical view of victim and blame, a victim and oppressor. And I believed, when I was an old hippie, it was all the straight people causing the problem. And then when I was a communist, I believed it was all the rich people. Then I was in the black politics, I believed it was all the white people. Then I was a feminist, I believed it was all the male people. So I keep blaming another group of people. That's not compassion. It begins with compassion, but it's this dualistic view of thinking the usual one, or there's somebody out there who causes it. And that turns into anger. So that's not virtue at all. The real virtuous action would be if you have compassion for the person you're killing, and that means you've got to have wisdom to know that it does benefit them, and that's pretty intense. So it's quite a tricky point. Get my point?
I think so.
Good. Lots of food for thought. Somebody else? Where are we? Yes, girl. Come on, give the girl the mic.
Okay, I also plan to restrict myself to 2 questions. Now I have one more follow-up question.
Good, darling.
It's a short question. I hope it has only a short answer. So when you have compassion for a person who, like maybe who's a habitual killer, there's exactly, and you want to prevent this person from killing more people for the sake of those people, and you also have the compassion in your heart that you think when this person keeps on killing, actually it's bad for him. And with this compassion in mind, you kill this person. Is it then a good karmic action?
I understand. Yeah, what you've just said is added on to what he said, and hers is superior. But it's good because you've also got compassion for the murderer. Now let's just look at what really compassion is in Buddhist view. It's not complicated. The first stages of practice are all about, one, seeing that we are suffering ourselves. Compassion is like university. You don't even go there yet. You've got to get to see your own suffering, and you've got to be exhausted from it. And that means not just the physical, but the mental, the delusions, the garbage inside, you know. You've got to be just so fed up with this nonsense and the ego rubbish, and I'm sick of suffering. That's only the first part. The second part is like the lottery. You know why you're suffering now, and that's the classic Buddhist one of karma and delusions. Your own rubbish is the main cause. And that's a very powerful thought. It's not self-pity, it's accountability. And because it says, I'm sick of suffering and my own rubbish is the cause of it, and then from this comes, I'm going to change. It's very powerful. That's like compassion for yourself, and that's the result of the first stages of practice. In Buddhism, they call that renunciation. It sounds very noble, but it's really like compassion for yourself. It's like when you're so sick of that cigarettes, you're finally suffering so much you realise you've got to stop. That's a really simple example. You get that point I'm making, people. You're so sick of eating too much chocolate and getting so fat and miserable, you decide, this is too much, I'm sick of it, I'm going to change. That's what comes from the view of karma, actually. It's accountability. And that is like compassion for yourself. Now you're qualified to have really valid compassion for others, because it's exactly the same attitude, but the object is others. So that means, oh my God, look at this suffering world. Look at these crazy people doing these ridiculous things, thinking they're getting happy, but all they're doing is causing themselves suffering. Look at all these people being angry, thinking it's going to make them happy. Look at all these people dropping bombs, thinking it's going to make them happy. All it's doing is creating more negative karma for them, and they're harming themselves. And your heart will break for them on that basis. So karma, in Buddhist view, is the basis of real compassion. And of course, because you realise we're all in the same boat, we've all been doing this for countless lives, and look at the nightmare we created ourselves. So it comes out of compassion and a softness, not out of, well, you all deserve it, you know. That's what compassion is. And so then you'd actually have even more compassion for the murderer. You could almost say that. Because you realise this person, out of a past habit, which is karma, is delusionally doing this thing, truly thinking it's right, but having no control, and he's going to suffer unbearably in the future. It's a bit like the compassion a mother has for her kid who's a junkie. Everybody else hates him. He's a pain in the neck, you know. He lies, he steals, he's hopeless to be around. Her heart breaks for him because she realises he's harming himself. That's real compassion. But you can't have this until you got it for yourself, which means being sick of your own suffering, sick of your own junky, ridiculous ego rubbish. And it doesn't come with self-pity, it comes with kind of courage. Do you understand? That's what compassion is. But that's fine still for you. You create good karma, like him and the ant. But there's another component that makes it a perfect action. And that is, you must have the wisdom that knows confidently that your killing that person will actually benefit him. Now that's pretty high. You've got to have clairvoyance to do this, and you've got to see the man's karma and know what future life he'll take. And that's a very high level of wisdom. Do you get my point? I mean, there's an example. This is a bit shocking, but it's trying to prove my point. Lama Yeshe, my teacher, the Lama of this centre, who's passed away now, and his reincarnation is 25-year-old Spanish boy, Lama Ursel. Lama Yeshe was at Kopan Monastery out, in Kathmandu, and this story is my friend Harry was trying to help one of the monks at the monastery. He'd kind of gone crazy and was sick, and Harry was telling Lama that he had a doctor to help this monk. And Lama basically said to Harry, well, just leave it alone, let it be, it's cool, And he didn't tell Harry the reason, and Harry has confidence in Lama, so he let the monk alone, and the monk eventually died. Now that sounds a bit shocking, right? Lama says, don't get a doctor, he's cool, and the boy goes and dies. So Lama Lundrup, the abbot at Kopan, explained to Harry, and you can take this or not, I'm just giving you the story, that due to Lama's clairvoyance, which is a common thing in Buddhism, it's no big deal. Buddha would say, we've been clairvoyant countless lives. We just lost the plot, that's all. We didn't kind of use it to go further, so we kind of fell down the mountain again. So due to Lama Yeshe's clairvoyance, he could see very clearly the mind of this monk. He could see that the karma he created, which was the cause of this suffering, he could see that if he got a doctor and got better, he would have had a nice life, but he didn't finish the karma he created. So his next life would have been terrible. So Lama could see that it was better for this person, it was coming from compassion, it was better for this person to have the suffering now, finish it now, get rid of it, and then next life is great. Now that sounds a bit shocking to us, I realise. But that's the long-term view, And so there's not only compassion there, but we can assume, as long as this story is true, that there was also the wisdom to know accurately that that was the right thing for this person. So that's the crucial component too, Sam, is the wisdom. In ordinary life, you'd know this. If you go to Nepal, up in the mountains, they've all got cataracts. So you could have compassion, right? The Buddha says a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. You could have compassion for these people. And you could rush off and you say, I must help these people. And you get a scalpel and you rush off and start cutting out. But you cut their eyes out instead of their cataracts because you're not a surgeon. Meaning you didn't have the wisdom. You had the compassion to want to help, but in an ordinary level you didn't have the means. So you would not interfere, would you? You wouldn't butt in and say, oh, I meant well. You get my point here? We know in ordinary life, compassion's not enough. You've got to have to know how to help the person. Well, this is just taking the same logic here, but extending it a bit more radically, that's all. Do you understand? Okay. Someone else? More? Okay,
yeah,
go for it.
Now I come to my two basic questions, actually. One I can connect to the doctor story, and this is the question about karma. I understand that it influences your birth. The karma, that it influences your birth.
Karma what?
Influences your birth.
Well, karma doesn't influence, sweetheart,
karma
doesn't influence your birth. Karma absolutely determines your birth. There's no other factor like God up there or anybody. Karma is the cause of your birth. That's it.
Okay,
just
determines your birth and also the environment and habits and so on. I just wanted to ask how much it determines your actions.
Totally.
Totally.
Hey, listen, karma means action. So what is the main determining factor for you to be good at music? Tell me the things. What are the I said it already. What are the components that have to come together for you to become a good musician? What are the things?
I decide that I want to do it.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Very good answer. First point. Then?
I practice.
You've got to have the potential. If you're tone deaf, you'll be in trouble. You've got to have potential, right? But what else? You've got to have external components, a piano, music, a teacher. But the main determining factor is what?
That I do it.
Your potential and your practice. Well then, that is the meaning, the most fundamental meaning of karma. That's karma, sweetheart. It's just that it's not just some religious idea. Buddha uses the word karma to refer to cause and effect when it comes to people doing things. So karma is the main cause. Okay, 4 main ways karma ripens, using the analogy of seeds and fruits. First way is the type of birth you zap into, the human womb, the lion womb, or whatever it might be. That is the main cause of this is your past, an accumulation of various actions that come together that program your consciousness and cause it to go, in your case, to a human mummy's womb. First one. Second is your tendencies, your characteristics, your personality, whether you're Hitler or Mother Teresa. Everything you wish to do, think to do, want to do, do, is no other cause but, excuse me, the simple thing that you've done it before. How come you're good at piano is because you did it yesterday. And how come you did it yesterday is because you did it the day before. That's karma, darling. So your wish to kill, lie, steal, go fishing, torture, whatever it might be good at music, be good at math, is the result of your past actions. There is no other main cause. Of course, you've got to have a good brain and a good family. They're the external conditions. The main cause is your past tendencies. You come fully programmed at the first second of conception with those tendencies. The next way your karma ripens is called experiences, similar to the cause, which is all the stuff that happens to you. How people see you, like you, love you, hate you, trust you, don't trust you, rape you, kill you, whatever. All of this is the direct result of your actions similar to this. And then the environment. So everything we experience, the environment, our body, our tendencies, the experiences, the main cause is simple. Second noble truth, Buddha, 2 main causes of suffering, karma, delusion. It's simple philosophy.
Yeah, my question basically is when I
got it wrong. All that answer for nothing.
No. It made it clearer that it all interacts for me. But when I can work on my mind now and when I can work on my mind now and change my tendencies.
Yes.
This was also in my karma that I will work
Sweetheart,
on my mind
if
and
you,
change the tendencies.
I hear you exactly. There you have a piano. There you've never heard of playing piano before, but something arises in you, doesn't it? Oh, that looks nice. Now, that comes from having played piano in the past. A friend of mine, she talked about her little boy when he was tiny. He saw the river, he saw fishermen. He ran like a magnet. He loved fishing from day one. This shows he had a tendency to go fishing. Another friend of mine, her little boy, she was taking the lice out of his head. He is 3. He's crying, "Mummy, Mummy, leave them alone. It's their home. Don't hurt them." So clearly he had a tendency for compassion. Guess what from? Having done it before. So if you meet the piano and you run towards it and then you start playing, it proves you've done it before. So if you are now angry, it proves you've done it before. But sweetie, you've got many things in your mind. So then you hear somebody say, well, anger causes you suffering, and you go, well, that's interesting. I think that's true. That proves you've also not been angry before, and then you start to have a little argument between the two, and eventually one wins, which is the one called patience. But whatever's in your mind, it can only be there if you've done it before. Like your garden, darling. Whatever's in your garden, you know necessarily it comes from a seed. It wouldn't grow otherwise. So if patience comes, it's because you've done that before. If anger comes, you've done that before.
Yeah, and the decision between
a decision to do
patience.
something is called intelligence. It means you've done that before. It wouldn't be there otherwise.
Okay, so the smallest, like the decision I take between patience and anger.
That's called intelligence, and you have the ability to make a decision between them. Yep.
Yeah, but the decision I finally take between those two
I'm
tendencies.
Sorry? I beg your pardon?
The decision I take between those two tendencies which are in myself.
Yes.
This decision is also determined.
That's what I'm saying. What else would it be? If it, my dear, if the decision, if it arose in your mind, where did it come from? Answer the question. If that thought arose in your mind to even discriminate between anger and patience, where did that thought come from? From having done it before. Mm-hmm. Whatever the thought is. Just keep it simple, okay? Whatever the thought is that arises in your mind, it only arose because you'd had it before. If it didn't arise, it means either it's not there or you can't access it. Like a little mummy lion, you tell her, well, darling, the buffalo doesn't like it, having its guts ripped out for breakfast. Mummy lion doesn't have the capacity to hear that. She's got the tendency for patience and kindness. What?
I'm so sorry.
What?
The concern is locked into the house.
Well, the key is under the rock.
No, we couldn't find it under the
Oh,
rock.
it's maybe in my pocket. There it is. Thank you very much. It's simple, okay? Don't get it all complicated. I know you're not, it's okay. Whatever arises, so the lion she can't access, she's got those tendencies there. Everybody has the tendency to be perfect, to be Buddha, to be compassionate, to be wise. But some lives, like a mummy lion, she's completely buried those seeds under the forest of aggression and attachment. So she can't access. Like some of my friends who are, like people who are psychotic, you know? A friend of mine on death row in Kentucky, one of my friends there who's a Buddhist, says, Robina, he thinks about torture day and night. So where does that come from? Unbelievable tendency from the past which he brought with him, and he just can't stop it because it's this completely obsessive tendency. And he can't hear the other options, you know. So the fundamental thought is, if it arises in your mind, baby, it's because you thought it before. And you can access it. Aren't you lucky? Because lots of people hear that anger's no good and they laugh at you. Lots of people hear that fishing is harmful to fish, but they can't hear it because they're addicted to fishing. So it depends, you know.
So it's fully determined how I decide. It's all in my
I'm sorry,
karma.
darling?
So every small action is 100% determined by karma.
Not 100%, because there are various conditions that have to be in place. If your brain is missing, your mind won't function. If your eyeball is missing, your eye consciousness can't function. You need other conditions. You can't just say, okay, a seed is the main cause of a rose. Would you agree? The rose seed. But sweetheart, if you hold it up here for 27 years, you will not get a rose bush because you need other conditions. Same with your mind. You need other conditions. Like if you were starving, living in the desert, struggling to find 1 grain of rice, you wouldn't have the luxury to bother listening to this patience and anger. So that's a condition. If you've got a fever of 110 degrees and your mind's hallucinating, that's another condition that would prevent you from listening to your mind. So you've got to have a healthy body, a decent life, some leisure, a full belly, space, time. That's a condition that enables you to look into your mind. Lots of other conditions have to be there in place. But the main cause is the point to get. The main one is your thoughts, is your karma. Karma, intention, action, tendency. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. The other one.
Okay.
I'm sorry. When bliss and basically, yeah, when our natural state is to
What?
when the natural state of mind is bliss, or is to be happy, or
That's right. Yes.
and we can get out of the circle, we can leave the circle, basically the circle of cyclic existence.
We can give up suffering. Keep it simple. It's
Okay.
okay. We can give up the garbage. Yes. Give up suffering. Yes. Then?
How did we get into this mess?
That's your question. You want a first moment. That's
Because
can
when we can leave it.
You're asking what Jordan asked. You want the first moment.
No, I don't want the
You
first.
do, because you wouldn't have asked it otherwise.
I wonder because when
No, listen, stop. You've got to stop, sweetheart. What's your name?
Mareike.
Who?
Mareike.
It's getting more complicated. Who?
It's a German name.
Is it Dutch?
Yeah, it's Dutch.
What is it, Mareike?
Yeah.
Mareike. I've known a Mareike before. Okay, listen, sweetheart. Listen carefully to your question. Say your question again. The exact words. What did you say?
How we got into this
In
mess.
the first place, you want a first moment. Sweetheart, I can forgive you for it because we can all think this, because we all have the view of self-existence, that everything exists from its own side, out of which comes the philosophy of creators and first moments and
May I correct make it more clear?
I know, but no matter what you say, you're coming to the same point. You want a first moment. Because you're saying, how did we get into it? Well, let me ask you. Let's say you can track back this. Why did you have this moment of thought now? Okay, let's do it. Why did you have that tendency, the thought arise in your mind to kill a fish? Why?
Because the moment before.
Because the moment before. And what caused that? Do the same as I said with Jordan. You're going to
The
find this.
moment-
You cannot find the first thought. You cannot find the first
No,
cause.
I'm not really looking for.
You are. But never mind. Keep saying it.
Okay, maybe I am.
It's okay. Good, Mareike.
I just wonder when we can end suffering.
Who?
When
Okay, darling, okay, I'm sorry, jumping ahead. I hear you. Listen, do you agree that a chicken comes from an egg?
yeah.
And you agree the egg comes from a chicken? Do you agree you can break the chicken anytime you like and break the egg anytime you like and have no chicken? So just because something is beginningless doesn't mean it's endless, is the answer.
Okay.
That's your answer. That's what one you wanted, isn't it? It doesn't follow because it's beginningless, because you can break the egg anytime you like and stop the chickens. Isn't that a relief? But let me tell you a tastier answer to the question. Listen to this one. What Buddha's saying is that the ultimate nature of our, or even relatively the ultimate nature of our mind, is that it's naturally pure. Now, speaking simply, I like the nice analogy of water, okay? We know what we mean by water. It's like 2 bits of H and 1 bit of O, okay? And we know that that is what water means. It's pure in its nature. But we all know it can be polluted, right? Now, the point is this. The pollution is there. It's real. It kills you if you drink it. But it's not at the core of the being of the water. You can remove the pollution. This is one really good simple example. The pollution is not, it might as well be. We think it is. It seems so completely mixed with the water. But we know if we can have good enough science, we can identify the pollution and extract it. And it doesn't affect the water at all. The water is always pure. Nothing ever changes the characteristics of H2O. The pollution can be removed. So that's one analogy. Now the point is this. Buddha's saying, sort of speaking roughly, that the H2O of our mind is the virtuous, positive states. That the natural state of mind, when it is virtuous, when it is kind, loving, wise, generous, joyful, to whatever degree, to that degree it is blissful. Because in other words, the virtuous states in themselves, the positive states of mind in themselves are happy. In themselves are happy. And why? Is because they're truthful. They are in sync with truth. In what sense? Not totally, but in what sense is you check, you and I are having a chat, let's say, and I'm not bullying like I'm bullying you now. Let's having a friendly chat and I listen to you. I'm smiling at your jokes and you smile at mine and I'm sympathetic to your problems and you listen to me. That's called being harmonious, wouldn't you agree? You're feeling good, I'm feeling kind, I'm feeling compassionate. So that's when we got the virtues even relatively prevalent, we are feeling harmonious. There's a sense of connectedness, wouldn't you agree? Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, you watch what happens when we start arguing. As soon as anger or jealousy or depression or fear arises, it's like we've cut the we in half. Suddenly, there's unhappy me here, thinking you're mean, and you're thinking I'm being mean, because the nature of the delusions is unhappiness. It's their nature. This is not punishment or reward. And why are they suffering? And this is the point that really when we can get this point, we're really on track in Buddha's philosophy. There are two main characteristics of the negative states of mind. One is, and we all know this one, they're disturbing. So when you and I are fighting, we feel very unhappy. That's their nature. But the other one, and this is the secret to it, not the secret, the key to it, is that they are delusional. They're liars. They're misconceptions. They're exaggerating. They distort. They are liars. And this is a tough one to see. We know that anger is unhappy, is disturbing. But when there's anger in my mind, let's say towards you, we all know you appear very ugly to me. I exaggerate your bad qualities. I say you are the cause of my suffering. So basically anger is an emotion, a feeling, but its real function is to lie, to distort, to exaggerate. It's delusional, in other words. So they are states of mind, in other words, that aren't accurate assessments of reality. They're the opposite to reality. So in the simplest sense, Buddha's saying reality is that everything's interdependent. Everything works harmoniously. Everything exists in dependence upon something else. This is reality. This is the meaning of emptiness. This is wisdom. This is reality. When things are working nicely, everything's interdependent and harmonious. Do you get that point? That's reality, Buddha says. When we're in the state of virtues, we're in touch with that to some extent. But the delusions is the opposite to that reality. There's no connectedness when we're angry. There's a separateness. I'm over here, you're over there. And you look at every delusion. There's a sense of lonely, separate, poor me, mean, ugly world out there, and they are lies. So when we're in touch with the delusions, we are in touch with lies. So because they're lies, they can be extracted from the mind. So what's left when you've fully developed your mind to perfection is only the positive states. The lies have been removed because they can be removed because they're not inherent. They're lies. You can remove lies from your mind. Does that make sense? Or is that all a bit much?
No, it makes a lot of sense. What I'm struggling with is just...
Sorry, darling?
What I'm struggling with
Yes.
for me is when the natural state of this water is purity, and it gets polluted, and the pollution can be removed.
Yeah.
There is some process of it getting polluted.
There's what, darling?
Some process.
I know, but
of
that's
the
where
pollution, or is the
that's where
pollution
this
not
analogy
real?
falls down. I'm only using it to make one point. You're wanting the beginning of point. You're stuck on finding the first moment.
I agree that the water was always there. I just wonder about the pollution.
No,
and
but
if the
why
pollution
can't you?
is
No,
real.
the difference in this analogy is if anger is in your mind now, it has always also been there. That's the point. Pollution is different. That analogy doesn't work. But here, the simple proof of the fact that anger is beginningless is that it's present in your mind now. Because if it can begin, which is the Christian teaching that you were perfect, and then you committed a sin, and now you're not perfect. You were God, one with God, and even I've talked to some Catholics, and they say that's a real difficult thing to try and describe. God made you in his own likeness. You were perfect, but then you went and chose to commit a sin, and you stopped being in the thing of God. That's impossible. Because listen, if you've burned the seed and your mind is pure, you can never get angry again. The seed has burned, sweetheart. So if there was some point when your mind was pure, and it wasn't, then you were pure then and you'd be pure now. So, okay, I'm hearing in your point, and it's a common one, misconception, that when Buddha says that your mind is naturally pure, it means you were pure once and then you lost the plot. No, not like that. You've always had anger. You've always had pollution, because it too can't begin, but it can end. And that's the real point. Now I understand your question. I'm very sorry. Are we communicating now?
Yes, I got it. Thanks.
Are we? Good, okay. Yes, yes, and yes. Yes. Give the mic, please. 5 o'clock. We're okay.
Not a question. Please be careful with your chair.
What's happening to it?
Back, I just
Oh, I've got at least 3 inches. It's cool. We're okay. Thank you very much. And it's a very heavy chair, believe me. I had it made personally. I designed it. I'm the designer. Okay, go on.
Hi, thanks for teaching. So I just have one question. Going to your friend's quote, practicing is having your hands in your own shit.
Yep.
So I guess I'm just wondering what your advice would be when your hands are really bogged in your own shit and your kind of victim ego mind takes over and then begins to associate your practice with this discomfort. How to kind of, when you're really bogged in that, gain
Sure.
courage, or they talk about like
Yes.
joyful diligence.
Sure.
You know.
Is to tell you, it sounds so simple, it's embarrassing, darling. Tell yourself some of your good qualities.
Yeah.
Tell yourself some of your good qualities. You know, this is our trouble. We're so sincere. We want to, look at us, sitting in this room on little hard cushions, wanting to be good people. This is a rare and magical thing on this crazy, insane earth. You should be weeping in happiness just at that. But the sad thing is we then start to look at all the garbage and we feel bad. So there's 2 things, okay? One is your garbage, but the other is feeling bad about it. And that's the one we have to change. So we can't even separate that now. Again, it's the same logic. I've got a pain in my knee, and of course I feel bad about it. But no, just because you have a pain in your knee, darling, doesn't mean you should feel bad. You can learn to see it as the result of karma, therefore this and therefore that, and it's a sign of practice, and I'm purifying. There's a lot of ways you can interpret your garbage that you're seeing in a good way. And I'm really not joking. And this is a big trick to get. And when we can get this, there's a paradigm shift in our practice. Then you really can be courageous. Because the point of practice is to see the problems. When you start to play piano, all you're seeing is how you can't play piano, right? You're overwhelmed by how you can't play piano. Well, you go kill yourself if you keep concentrating on that. Because you're not Mozart yet. But you first have to see what your potential. You have the vision of Mozart. You know you can become that. That gives you courage, number one. You've got to know what your potential is. You should know what you're heading for. Do you get my point? So what we do is when we start to see the negativity, we over-identify with that as being me. Now, it is you, but darling, it's not the only you. You've got the potential that you're heading towards. Do you understand my point? And that is the opposite to victim. And we've got to have the courage to find our qualities, praise our effort, and not arrogance, but really to praise the good qualities. And we do not like to do that. Ego loves to be miserable. I'm not being mean about us. We all know this one. We've got to have the courage to see our potential, to know why, in other words, why have you got your hands in your own shit? Because you're trying to identify it so you can remove it. Why are you going knee deep into that polluted water? Because you know that you can get rid of the pollution. You've got to identify the pollution, otherwise you can't remove it. So you've got to have the courage to know why you're identifying it so you can remove it. So you've got to get some perspective here. And it takes time because we don't like to find our good qualities. We think it's virtuous to be miserable. And that's the trouble with religion. We think that's religious. Look at all the fundamentalists around the world, with their long faces, loving to be miserable. It's horrible. It's horrible. It is monstrous. So you've got to be humble and see your good qualities. Rejoice that you're working so hard. Be glad you're seeing the shit, darling. But it's not you. It can be removed. And that's what gives us courage, I swear. It's painful because we don't want to look at it. It's too painful. But the fact that you can change it gives you the courage to look at it. The normal world, we don't think we can change it. Really, scientifically, recently, they talk about how the greatest finding of the 20th century, or maybe it's the 21st century, is this business of plasticity of the brain, meaning it can change. Guess what? Over the last 20 years, doing all these conferences with the Buddhists, putting wires onto the brains of meditators, they've now found the miraculous thing that brains change. By thinking about compassion, the brain changes. And they say it's the greatest discovery of the 20th century. Well, Buddha could have told you for the last 2,500 years that. Now they're proving it. Well, this is courageous. This is great. We have thought until now we're stuck with what we're born with. And we believe that. That's ego. That's the irony of ego. It's fixed. I'm bad. I'm miserable. I'm this. I'm that. We are that, but don't over-exaggerate it, please. That's the point. Delusion, ego over-exaggerates everything. Don't exaggerate. It is you. It is garbage, but look at how it causes you pain and know you can go beyond it. That gives you courage. That's accountability, the opposite to guilt. Guilt is just not taking responsibility. Guilt is a child, and we love to be guilty. You know what I mean? So be brave, darling. Get yourself some perspective. Yourself, you've got some friends who praise you? Have you got friends who love you and praise you?
Yeah.
Right. Well, then you have to be that kind of friend to yourself. You know yourself, we crave to hear other people say good things about us, but we have to say it ourselves. Because if my friend can say it to me, don't insult them by thinking it's not true. That's extremely rude to your friend. It's like you're spitting it back at them. So take that praise and nourish your own little heart, okay? And then start to say it to yourself. Mm-hmm. I tell you, it makes a big difference. All right. Someone else? Over here somewhere. Yes.
What is it, pure?
Pure?
What is the meaning? Yeah.
Pure means, in this context, speaking about mind, love, kindness, wisdom, joy, contentment, all the positive states of mind, they mean pure. In the simplest sense, that's pure.
Like when the Buddha, it's all these qualities together?
What Buddha means is, okay, I think the Tibetan word for Buddha, Sangye, I don't speak Tibetan. The first syllable, I think, implies the complete removal of all the pollution, all the negativity, all the neuroses, all the ego grasping, all the nonsense. And the second syllable, Gye, I think, implies the complete development of the positive states. Now, Buddha's saying that is the natural potential of every single mind. That's what they mean by every mind possesses Buddha nature. It's this cute way they talk. Every mind possesses the potential to be free of all pollution and to be full of all the positive qualities.
And bliss?
Bliss is just a very fancy word for very happy.
And happy.
And, okay, let me tell you something very interesting. The Buddha says this, as I said it before, to Marika. One of the characteristics, just naturally, of the deluded states of mind, anger, attachment, fear, and all the rest, is that they are suffering. In their nature, just having of them is meaning you're suffering. And in their nature, the positive states of mind are happy and joyful and blissful. So right now, of course, we have 70% pollution and maybe 30%, pure. So we don't ever experience much joy. Do you understand? Because our mind is dragged down by ego and fear and worry and depression and anxiety and low self-esteem. That's the suffering we have. That's why we suffer. The Buddhist psychological view says that the nature of all these delusions is fear. Look at the anxiety. Look at the panic attacks we have. It's so common in the world now to have panic attacks. That's anxiety. That's fear. That's the nature of the delusions. So now in the materialist world, the materialist models of the mind, this is the point, These are considered normal. Meaning an ordinary person, a proper, reasonable person, would have some anger, some depression, some jealousy, some love, some this, some, a nice rounded person would have a little bit of all of these. The implication being that if you didn't have a little bit of this, it's like having only one hand. You're not natural. So the view of all the psychological models in our materialist world are we're all naturally angry, we're naturally depressed, we're naturally jealous. It never occurs to us to think we could rid our minds of them. This is what Buddha means by nirvana, but because we put it in the sky, we don't hear it properly, Buddha's outrageous in what he's suggesting, psychologically. He's radical in what he is saying our minds have the potential to achieve. So these types of meditation called concentration, which have been around since the Hindus. Buddha took them from the Hindus and they're happy to share, as I like to say. Not a problem. We just hear it as religion, but it's so insulting. It's psychology. They are these marvelous techniques that enable us to steady the mind and take it to a more refined, more subtle level where, listen to me, just naturally the gross neuroses have ceased. Hear my words, please. So, a friend of mine, usually in the text they describe this state of concentration when you've got it. They describe it in 9 stages, okay? So the friend of mine who did years and is doing years of retreat, I interviewed him one time for a magazine, and he said, Robina, maybe I got to about the 5th of the 9 stages of this psychological process, okay? And he said words like this. He said, Robina, there is no question that the bliss, the joy I experienced was infinitely superior to any joy or bliss I had ever experienced through my senses. And he meant the best sex possible. Infinitely superior. Hear the words. Don't hear it as religion. Just hear the simple meaning of the words. So this is Buddha's simple, natural point. That to the extent that mind is unpolluted by neuroses and fears is the extent to which it is happy or joyful or blissful. That's it. And he says this is completely natural. But we are so caught up in the pollution, and then even our materialist models of the world say it's normal, we don't even posit the possibility of being anything else, Do you understand my point? It's a natural thing. It's psychology. Buddha's your best psychologist, I tell you. I'm not trying to be prejudiced or anything. Well, I am. Yes, and yes behind.
Okay, let's go. I have made one observation. Let's start from the beginning. I see 2 things in Buddhism, which is the psychological part, which I consider as pretty close from the truth, if there is any truth. And another part which I find a bit challenging. Because I've made an observation, which is all theories, when you challenge them with the reality or what you can perceive from it, they evolve in time. They evolve in time, they change because you one day find something which is contradictory to the hypothesis you had made, so you change it. You adjust, and it's like this for lots of things. The karmic principle, the rebirth and all this, I find it a bit strange that it was never challenged or never adapted or changed because of confrontation with what we observe. And in that case, I would see it as Christianity or whatever. Apologize to everybody in the room if it's shocking. I would consider it as a creation from the mind, because everything evolves. What should this theory remain permanent? Nothing is.
Oh, okay, I see. So you think at some point 1 and 1 wasn't 2, do you?
Sorry?
You think at some point in time 1 plus 1 didn't equal 2. You think it maybe equals 7.
No.
Is that what you're suggesting?
That's a good example.
Yes, it is a good example. So first answer my question. And then no, I get your point and it's a good point. So let's go really one step at a time. So do you agree that 2 million years ago, 1 plus 1 was equaling 2? Would you agree? Or do you think it might have equaled 7? What do you think?
I don't think it might have equaled
Tell
7
me.
because, wait.
Yeah, good.
Because I think it's a creation of
No.
the human mind.
Sweetie, you've just hit it on the head. Buddha would say everything is a creation of the mind, but that doesn't mean it's not true, sweetie pie. The thing that Buddha's arguing with is not inherently true. So you're exactly right. So, but if somebody 2 million years ago who had oranges, or no, when did they have oranges? I don't know. Whatever they had, 2 people 1 million years ago had rocks. If they'd come up with the concept of 1 plus 1, you would always have got 2. Because it is a concept that the mind did make up, but it's relatively true. There's no contradiction, sweetheart. Just because the mind makes it up, Buddha says that's the proof that it exists. You're using it as the proof that it doesn't.
Okay, then how come, sweet Robina darling, how come that it never evolves? How come
What, darling?
How come
Okay,
it never evolves? It was never challenged.
You've got the wrong view, I would suggest, of evolve. If something is true, then it won't ever change. It's really simple. Relativity is a natural law, given the conditions of this earth. Numbers which we have created are a relative truth. They will always be true. There's no reason to make 1 and 1 7. Don't complicate things. 1 and 1 is 2 is fine. No reason for it to change. If it's not true, I agree, it will change. Now, Buddha says, ultimately, the final way that everything does exist is it doesn't exist inherently. Everything is empty of existing in and of itself. You've heard these words, right? Now, okay, it takes longer to get it, but he would suggest that is the ultimate truth. 20 trillion years ago, 40 million years in the future, it is a natural law that just occurs. It is how it is. He would say that about karma. He would say that about consciousness. It is just how it is. It doesn't need to evolve. Okay, technology is an evolution from something else, but that's fine. That's a relative reality. Whether you have potatoes or carrots is depending on where you live, But we're talking fundamental natural laws. Buddha would say, remember, mind is beginningless, and he says the wind energies and the elements are beginningless and don't need creating. So we've got to take that as our hypothesis first. So within this fact, he says, karma is a natural law. If you take certain elements of the world, gravity is a natural law. If you take certain things in the world, you have gardens, then botany is a natural world, given other things. So why would you want botany to evolve and change and not become botany? Why?
Yeah.
Works, and you get carrots, good enough.
I still have a problem with this one single principle, rule, this one, karmic rebirth and all this, not changing. Gravity...
No. Suggest that something is simply the way it is. So if it is simply the way it is, it will always be the way it is. Emptiness, the Buddha would suggest, is ultimately the way everything is. So if this is true, then it is true. If it is not, it will evolve, baby. I agree with you. Absolutely.
So
like 1 and 1 is 2. If we can prove that 1 is and 1 is not 2, then it will change. The only reason for things to change, evolve as you nobly call it, is if it's not true.
Okay, so it's not impossible to imagine that maybe in 1,000 years, having had lots of people meditating and thinking a lot about all this, the rule will be modified by an example.
Buddha is finding you the consequences of this, and he is suggesting that discovering the truth of emptiness, removing them from the mind every single atom of all pollution, you will get the result of Omniscience, which is that means your consciousness pervades the universe and knows that which exists as it exists, including the minds of all sentient beings, number one. Number two, it will also imply that you will develop empathy because you've gone beyond pollution. You will develop empathy with every single sentient being's mind infinitely, as if you're your most precious child, and you will wish only to benefit them. Third, you will have the characteristic of infinite power, which means because you're no longer in the thrall of the boring laws of the boring universe, you can manifest this omniscient consciousness of yours, which pervades the universe, into millions of forms throughout millions of universes for millions of eons to benefit the trillions of sentient beings for as long as time exists. Now, Buddha says that's enlightenment. He says that's how it is. Countless beings have achieved it. Now, if you can find more than that, please, very welcome. This is the point. Nothing to try and prove here. If Buddha isn't accurate, then, baby, you will find that out. Definitely. So, yes. Bloody hell. But I just told you before. I answered him. I answered him before. Acupuncture to you now. Let's say I presented acupuncture and I say to you, how do I prove it? Answer my question. How would I prove it? Please answer my question. How would I prove acupuncture? Give me the methods. Give me, oh, rubbish, that's lazy. Give me the methods.
Okay.
What would I do?
You try to scientifically...
what?
Scientifically examine it.
That's right, and discover it for myself.
Yeah.
There's the answer to you, petal.
No.
Yes.
No.
You don't want to do
you
it.
You have to scientifically to examine.
Scientifically means proving it to be true. We're talking about the mind here.
Yeah.
The way for you to prove.
No, not only.
We are talking about. I am talking about the mind. You might be talking about something else. What are you talking about?
I'm saying you have to be able to find out.
You do.
Or disprove.
You will.
No, but how can if I'm not?
Sweetheart.
Yeah.
You're not listening, but that's cool.
Okay.
I'm presenting to you Buddha's ideas.
Okay.
I'm not,
just saying.
Shush. I am not getting you to believe a single word I am saying. So, if you want to prove this, you need to go and study the whole package. You need to take it as a hypothesis. You need to go to work on your mind. You need to get single point of concentration. You need to develop clairvoyance. Then you will prove it or not. That's up to you. I'm not trying to force you to believe it. And it's the same with anything. The onus is on you, darling. I'm simply giving you the Buddha's ideas. I'm not getting you to believe it. If you want to prove it, it's up to you. Can't you see that?
Okay, you're right. I'm just saying. I'm just saying it's not a scientific examination. If it
isn't scientific, then it's all a load of garbage. You should go to the office and get your money back right now and sue me for lying to you. Scientific means you prove something to be true. That's what you have to do. You don't have to tell me to do it. Mind your own business. If you want to prove it, you have to go and do it. I'm giving you a taste.
Okay, and you can't prove it distal?
What?
Antal?
What, sweetheart?
I need to think about it.
You do indeed. Somebody else? Go on. Back there, over there. Yes, people.
I have a question about dream night. Dream in the night. So here is illusion. In the night when we dream is also illusion. What's the difference between the illusion?
Okay. This view, this little model of the mind that I've been describing, gross consciousness, which includes the day-to-day conceptuality, sensory experiences, yeah? So when we go to sleep, according to the Buddhist model, that's your subtle consciousness. That's the subtle consciousness working, which is a level of your cognition, the level of your consciousness that doesn't need the brain to function. And this is where meditators go to, but they have far more powerful control over this mind. It sounds a bit weird how I'm saying it, but that's dreams. And so obviously in a dream, if you think someone's killing you, it's illusion in the simple sense that when you wake up, they didn't kill you. So it's just your mind being very vivid and very creative. So it's simply not true in the sense that what happens in a dream isn't happening. You're in your bed fast asleep. But don't make it more complicated than that. It is simply illusion because the being killing and the flying in the sky and all this isn't happening. So in that sense, it's illusion. But don't make it all fancy. So then, what's your question from that? Is that what you mean, or you mean something more?
About the people that I see when I dream.
I mean, you're not seeing them. You're in your bed fast asleep with your eyes closed. And they're not in there. They're in their beds fast asleep too.
And here it's like real.
What, darling?
Here, now, right now, it's like real.
Who is? Where?
Yeah,
they talk like this, but don't worry about those boring statements. Leave it alone. This is a way of talking to help us loosen the grip of grasping at everything. But leave it. Forget it. We're talking ordinary reality here. This life is... I don't want to go on about that. It's all this la-di-da spiritual talk and it's rubbish. Unless our mind is ready for it and we can get the learning from it. All right, she's looking at me. She wants more. Okay, they use this as an analogy, okay. They use it as an analogy to help us loosen the grip of all the drama of daily life. Oh my God, someone doesn't like me, I'm going to kill myself. Oh my God, I'm so blissful, I found my soulmate and I'm going to be happy for eternity. These extremes of the up and down crazy mind, you know? The craziness of ourselves, grasping at everything, wanting to kill ourselves one minute and in heaven the next. This is attachment and aversion. So this one small analogy they use in the texts and the lamas, they say, when you see, think life is like a dream. And in a way, I think as we get older, you really see this. Don't you feel? Old people? Who's old around? Who's admitting to being old? Isn't life a bit like a dream? It kind of goes faster and faster. You remember it, and it was all real, but it's gone like a dream. There's a feeling that does come when you kind of get less kind of grasping at everything, you know? So it's a good little analogy to have. And okay. It's enough. The other thing is your dreams might be accurate. You might be having something clairvoyant. You might be seeing something about to happen because when your mind is more subtle, you can see the past and future. And lots of people have these experiences, and that is valid. So if you see someone having a car accident, you might well be seeing the future, the future of that person. Very common, people have this experience. Yeah. Do you see my point? Yes.
Can you comment on the possibility of, the possibility of love without attachment, or possibility of a long-term relationship
go for it, honey.
Without attachment?
I often say if I had a husband and children, they'd be dead. Guaranteed. So, all power to you. No, I'm not being ridiculous. Sweetheart, listen, it's totally possible, but like anything, it's according to where you're at, isn't it? If you get born in this life from having practice in the past and you come in like with compassion and wisdom and not much anger and not much jealousy, well, you're going to have pretty good relationships. But that doesn't mean you should stop having relationships. See it as practice. And so if you're really using your relationship as practice, you'll be so grateful. Every time he farts in the bathroom, every time he gets home late, every time that he's mean to you, you're using it as your practice. Then it's a worthwhile relationship, darling. You're learning about your own attachment and your jealousy and your fears. But if you drown in it and you go crazy, that's what most people do in their relationships, and you all go mad, So if you can be brave enough, go for it, and then enjoy the bit of pleasure that comes along as well. Understand what I mean? Of course it's possible. Love is what's possible. But right now it's polluted by 70% attachment most of the time, if not 90%. So love is kind of squashed. Love is the wish that others be happy. Love is altruistic, Remember who was it? Angelina Jolie. Yes, Angelina Jolie lately with Brad, I was really impressed what she said. When she was with that other bloke, what's his name? She drank his blood. What's his name? Who? Billy Bob, oh my God, I remember seeing pictures of them. They were like vampires. That was attachment, 100% attachment. I'm not being mean about them. That was 100% attachment. Every time you saw photos, they were like glued to each other, you know. They had vials of each other's blood. That's called attachment. Okay, so when that stopped, the love went, you know. But with Brad, it seems to me they got more love there. And she said, you know, practicing to love, which is always putting others first. That's an amazing statement. All power to Angelina. She's learning to love now. I'm very happy for her. So yeah, you can try. It's tough work, but don't be scared of it. What happens when we become Buddhists? We think, oh, I shouldn't be attached. I'll become renounced. And you walk around like some hopeless person. Would you like tea, Robina? Oh, don't care. Would you like coffee? Oh, I don't mind. This is called indifference, and it's revolting. Don't be indifferent, please. Be brave, have a relationship, learn about the pain of attachment, learn about the pain of anger and jealousy, learn about the loss when he gives you up for a younger version. You've got to be prepared to take it and learn from it. Then it's fantastic. But don't expect all the... Like, I remember reading about Nicole when she was with Tom. Nicole Kidman. She was with Tom Cruise. And I remember reading an interview, and you could see they were hugely in this attachment relationship, whatever, love as well. At the end of the interview, she said, we will be together until we're 80. And then she kind of covered herself and she said, well, if we're not, I will be devastated. And of course, when he left her, she was devastated. That's what attachment is. If you're seeing it as a fantasy, as perfect, as soulmates, as wow, I've found love finally, you are demanding trouble and suffering. But if you see it as hard work, as a worthwhile, and every time you work on your attachment, you're learning to be loving, every time you forgive, you're learning to be, that's worth, then it makes it practice, darling. So go for it, enjoy. But I know for myself, I made a decision that the bit of pleasure that came, it wasn't worth all the other rubbish, so I'd rather give it up, you know. I'd rather have freedom, thank you. That's my thing. Freedom and truth is all I wanted. I didn't want houses, babies, security. Oh, the thought of it was like being in prison for me. Horror, I kind of suffocate the thought of it, you know. Whew.
Well, actually, what you just commented on babies brought to mind my other question. So you can be a practicing Buddhist and have, you know, all of your purifying your karma, and then you have a baby, and the karma from that in that child's mind, no matter what you do, you can have some terrible previous karma.
That's right. You could give birth to Hitler, baby. You know, you could give birth to a terrorist. You could give birth to a psychotic. You might, yes, due to karma. You might indeed. So be ready for it. Because you don't make the baby, you see. It's not your baby. It's just got some karma with you. So you be careful. But it's something else. It's another point, actually. I remember reading, hang on, in this great book called The Tibetan Art of Parenting. And it's got this cute little Tibetan baby in a little kind of yak rug on the front, kicking his little naked body, just like a baby book. But it was fascinating. But one of the things in there was very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense, you know, that for the Tibetans, well, for practitioners, you really are very careful about how you have sex. You try to be generous, you try not to do it greedily, you try not to do it kind of full of lust or drunk or violent, because the way you have sex attracts that kind of consciousness. So you look at the world, how deluded we are. Look at the violence and the raping and the just the grotesque sexual grasping. I'm not trying to be mean about sex. Sex is great, you know. Do you understand my point? So you're going to attract garbage consciousnesses. I mean, look at the human race. It's running downhill fast because we're attracting unhappy consciousnesses. So, you know, at least the Tibetans, they would make all these prayers to Tara and try to do their prayers and practices, and then they get nice babies. So, have nice, pure sex, okay? Someone else? Yes, sweetheart.
I got it. Okay, so my question is about hierarchies within Buddhism.
Hierarchies?
Like who are we to decide that a dog is of a lower consciousness?
I understand, sure. You don't have to believe it, but obviously any statement of what is true is referenced to certain positions, isn't it? You can't just say, there's no absolute there. So that's the first point. Second point, anything in, let's say, if you were learning about acupuncture or mathematics, and the teacher says to you, if you do this, it'll get this result, and if you do this, it'll be this. If you've got confidence in that teacher, and even though you don't understand it, first of all, because you're trying to take it as a hypothesis and learn about it, you've got to at least take it as, oh, well, there must be something interesting there. Let me look into it. So that's your first point. So then what Buddhism means by a human consciousness is a better one to have than a dog one. You see, first point, Buddhist psychology refers to all sentient beings, which is a very interesting point, not just humans. So Buddha has a very simple view. The fundamental delusion is ego grasping, known colloquially. It's like this primordial grasping, this primordial belief in and grasping at a sense of a separate me, okay? And this is the source of all pain and all suffering, and its nature is fear and panic. This gives rise to unbelievable attachment, bottomless pit of neediness, thinking I've never got enough, always wanting something more, which then causes me to get angry when it doesn't get what it wants, which then causes me to get jealous, which causes me to be proud and arrogant and aggressive, all these things that we are very familiar with, right? Buddha says this is the way all minds work. Now, try not to put our views onto what we take this view, okay? This is the view we're using as an example. Let's take this as a view and let's look at a lion. We've got to look at behaviour first. Now, taking this as our view, okay, that there's ego grasping, it gives rise to attachment, which gives rise to aggression and all the other things. Now, if we take the behaviour of the mummy lion, could you not determine, at least superficially, that there's an enormous amount of ego grasping there, there's unbelievable attachment, there's unbelievable ignorance, there's unbelievable aggression? I mean, you think not? Okay, listen, don't stop your own view for the moment and try to take this view. Just posit it on the basis of ego grasping, attachment and aggression, even just these three. Now, the lion. Okay, you try and imagine, I'm talking about you and the lion both having a similar mind, okay? Let's say you wake up in the morning and you are hungry and you have babies, and the only option open to you in your mind is that you go outside, you stalk your neighbour, you get them from behind, you get them by the throat, you rip their guts out, they're screaming in agony, I mean screaming in agony, you get your babies and then you all casually eat the living, screaming human being. Would you not think that's quite, no, be careful in the answer, would you not think that's quite deluded behaviour? Just think of it. Would you think that would be a shocking thing to do? Would that indicate to you no sensitivity to the feeling of the human being, absolute unawareness of their feelings? They're screaming, but you don't stop. Would you not think that's quite cruel and aggressive? Would you not think, sweetheart? It's not a tricky question. Just answer it honestly. Would you think that's quite heavy? You don't want to answer my question, do you? You're determined to have your other view. You might be right, but you've got to look at this one to see if it's right first. You don't have to, darling, but you asked me the question, so I'm giving you the opportunity. If you behave this way, or you saw a human behave this way, would you suggest that person was quite deluded and mentally ill and no compassion? Would you think that? Yeah. Sweetheart, would you think that? Well then, there's your lion. There's no difference between you and a lion. Behaviour indicates. There's zero compassion in the mummy lion's behaviour. Zero. She can't hear the buffalo screaming. She doesn't notice that it's suffering. She sits there eating its live guts. I'm sorry. The Buddhist psychology refers equally to all living beings. You've got to hear that point. The view you've got is a different view that has a different set of rules for animals. I'm telling you, Buddha's view has the same rules for both. So if you think of it this way, it's simple. It's called delusion. But you've got to think about it, that's all. It might be wrong, but you've got to look into it. I know the view you have. I've had it, but tell me your view. Come on, I'll listen.
I'm just thinking that who are we to decide what's right and what's
Jesus,
wrong?
God, girl, I just gave you an example. What do you mean, who are we to decide? Well, do you think, okay, let me ask you, do you think it's possible for you to get knowledge in, say, math or music or botany? Do you think it's possible? To be an expert in this? And to talk to somebody who knows nothing about it and that they can show that you've really done your work and you've got this knowledge. You think it's possible? Well, then why do you not think it's possible for a person to have this kind of knowledge about minds? That's a simple question. You have to think it's possible that a person has this level of knowledge. Now, if it is not knowledge and if it is superstition and arrogance and speculation and criticism, then I agree it is a disgusting thing to say. So this is either a truthful assessment or it's not. And that's what you have to find out, same as him. I'm only telling you what Buddha says, darling. Who are we to say? This is knowledge, it's been around, and that's up to you to find out if it's possible to have clairvoyance and to see all these things are true. Every word that you're hearing from my crazy, rude mouth is coming directly from Buddha's teachings and is said to be directly from the Buddha and is his view of the universe. Like when you hear botany, like when you hear about music. That's up to you to find out if that's valid. I can't do more than tell you what Buddha says. But don't treat it as something to believe in, darling, which is how we think of religion. I don't want you to believe this. If you want to know what's true, bloody go check it out, like I told him. Excuse me, why am I swearing at you people? I do not know. Do you hear my point?
I do.
Good, darling.
It just feels to me that it's...
Oh, you're so determined. Keep going. What just feels what?
That we're just functioning in...
What, dear?
A minimum, like in a single reality.
I beg your pardon, what?
In a single dimension. It feels...
I don't know what you're telling me. You've got to speak more slowly and say it more completely.
Okay.
What are you telling me?
I'm thinking, doesn't it justify...
What does what just... You've got to spell out your thoughts more carefully.
If the lion kills the weak buffalo, isn't it all right? Because it does it for survival. And
okay, Hitler did it for survival. He wanted all the wretched Jews out of the way. 6 million wretched Jews are polluting the earth. That's survival. What's your problem? That's good? That's cool? Hitler did a good job. He got 6 million off the earth. You Israelis in your little skinny country. You jog across it. Get my point, people. Don't think I'm being rude. Get my point. I'm going to Israel in August. I love Israel. And Israelis should like me. Look, I'm as direct as you. It's true. Israelis are the rudest people on earth. But I love you. The security people at the Tel Aviv airport, I swear, top marks for the rudest. But I like Israelis, okay? So please hear my point.
More than jail?
What?
More than in jail?
More than in jail? I like anybody. The ruder the better. No, I really am being extreme. I don't know why I'm being extreme. It's your people's fault, okay? You're bringing it out of me. Sweetheart, it's like, okay, I'm only giving you Buddha's view and it's all food for thought. And I know I'm giving you an awful lot of stuff here. But we're all big boys and girls and we can think about it.
I just don't know how to bring the concepts of relativity.
I'm sorry, darling, you've got to speak your thoughts out more clearly.
How does relativity...
I beg your pardon, I cannot hear you.
How does relativity...
How does what?
Like relativity.
You mean Einstein's relativity or Buddha's dependent arising? Which one?
Explain both.
Which one do you mean? Are you meaning Einstein's view or Buddha's view?
I want to know about Buddha.
What, darling?
I want to know about Buddha.
Okay, go on. What's your question?
About his view of relativity and how do you bring that with hierarchy? How do you join the two together?
How do you do it with hierarchy?
Because it feels to me that hierarchy is like...
Darling, why do you say it? No, listen to me. Okay, listen. Another way. I'll tell you about... Good, I'll answer your question. If you want a very long neck, be a giraffe. You cannot beat giraffes for a long neck. You get my point? So if the point is to have a long neck, giraffe is the best one. They win the discussion every time. Now, if you want to be a really good, killer and run very fast, you'd better be a panther. If you want to fly in the sky, it's free. Be a bird. If you want to have a few options and have less fear and work on your mind and develop compassion, sweetie, we're pretty crummy at it, but maybe it's best to be a human. So it's not a hierarchy, it's a relative reality. It's a question of what you'd like to accomplish. So if I look at my little domestic doggy woggy or my little pussy wussy cat, who I think are so cute, I think if I want to develop wisdom and compassion and forgiveness, I do not want to be a dog. They've got very small minds. They're as thick as posts. They have a lot of paranoia. They have a lot of fear and a lot of attachment. There's not much possibility. But if I want to have some compassion and wisdom and make some choices, I think probably human is about the best you're going to get. So it's all a question of what you want, darling. That's relativity. There's not a hierarchy. Do you see my point? There you go. Now we're communicating. Good. That was a very... behind you. Go on.
It's when the Buddhist text said about no eyes, no ears, no eye. Does this mean the emptiness?
So what he means about that... Oh my gosh. 10 minutes to go. This is the whole emptiness business, you know, the relativity one. It's really simple, actually. And it's this point about the mind. Who said the mind making it up? Where were you? You. What's your name? Ahmed. Who? Ahmed. Yes. That's... Is that Israeli name? It's French. Oh, French. Ahmed. I'm French. Courtin. I'm French. I'm my great-grandparent. En Angleterre. Okay, so listen, her point about how the mind makes it up. The point, these are the words, okay? The Buddha's saying that this viewpoint of ignorance, which is this ego grasping, it creates like this sense of having this view deep in the bones of our being. We believe in this separate, kind of isolated me-ness as opposed to you-ness. So that's what runs the show now. We live in this little separate little world, you know. And so it brings, and its nature is fear. Its nature is fear. And so Buddha's saying this is a fundamental mistake that our mind has been making for a long time. He says what it thinks, the way it thinks things are, isn't how they are. They're not these separate, isolated, inherent, intrinsic, thisness, thatness, goodness, badness, me-ness, you-ness. It's a lie. And so the consequence of this is fear and the delusions and all the garbage, and look at the world. So when we have realized, you know, from practice, that in reality things are interdependent, things are relative, things exist in dependence upon this and that, what that brings is less fear and more peace and connectedness and joy. It's its natural consequence, you know. And so the words for it are that nothing exists in that way, and that, or meaning, in other words, everything is empty of being that. Empty just means not. There's no religious meaning in emptiness. It's just the words they use, you know. It just means things aren't that way. Things lack that way of being. So then when we realise things lack that way of being, we get to realise how things are interdependent. That's all. That's the meaning of it. So there is no eye, no ear, etc. they talk about in the Heart Sutra. But the words are from its own side, in and of itself, inherently, intrinsically. And that everything does exist, but not from its own side. Everything does exist. Everything is real. Good is real, and bad is real, and up is real, and down is real. But in so far as it is interdependently this way, not from its own side this way. That's just the meaning, one simple meaning of interdependence as the flip side of this emptiness business. Does that make sense? There you go. Okay, good enough.
More question. From your point of view...
Where are you?
I am here.
Oh, you...
Yeah,
go.
At the back. From your point of view, what is the purpose of analytic meditation?
Well, from Buddha's point of view, because I'm only speaking here from Buddha's point of view, okay, it's a fancy word for thinking. There's just this funny way Tibetans talk. Don't mystify it. So let me give you a simple example. You go to school and your little teacher tells you that 1 and 1 is 2. And she says, go and do your homework. Now, first, you've got to go home and you've got to have a bit of concentration first, don't you? So you do your concentration meditation first. Just using this as an analogy. You have to focus your mind. And then you would do the second kind, and then what would you do? You would have to first you'd have to be about what is 1, what is plus, what is 2, and what is equals. You'd have to know these things first, wouldn't you? At the moment for you, it's intellectual knowledge. Would you agree? So you'd have to go and make it experiential. You have to try and find the truth of it. You agree? And it's called homework. We don't call it analytical meditation, but it is analytical meditation. The word meditate in Tibetan is really simple. It's the verb to familiarize. So it's a fancy word that we don't use in our culture. It just means you go home, you get your facts, 1 plus 1 equals 2, and you use different methods to think it through. Would you agree with that? You think about it, don't you? Do you agree that you think about it when you do your homework? You think about it. You use different ways to think about it. And then what comes? Oh, I get it. At some point, having thought about it, the penny drops and you get an experience, the truth of 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now that's an experience, isn't it? It's true for you. You now understand it, don't you? Do you understand my point? This is exactly what meditation means. You go listen to the teaching, you go do your homework, you sit down, you do some concentration so you can focus, and then you think it through. You use your intelligence. That's what analytical meditation means. It's nothing fancy. You use your grey matter, and you think karma through, you think impermanence through, you think it through. And then at some point, when you have better concentration and you go deeper, then you get an insight. Well, again, insight, just a fancy word for, I get it. Are you hearing me? So, I hear some of you people didn't like analytical meditation. Well, maybe you don't like Buddhism, and that's cool. You don't have to like Buddhism. I mean, I'm sorry for you. You should be leaving, getting your money back if you don't like it. You don't need to like it. But the reason to hear all Buddha's philosophy, because he says we're all working around the world now, each one of us with our own elaborate philosophy of the universe. Every one of us. We mightn't be called a Jew or a Buddhist or a communist. We are our own ist. We have our own. Everything we see, we interpret it according to what our view is. So we've all got viewpoints. We've all got a philosophy. All we're doing here is listening to Buddha's philosophy, and if we want to, we can listen to it, think about it, and see if there's something that's relevant to us for our life. Now, for Jordan, he might go back after this and decide he becomes the best Catholic possible, or whatever he is. And that's cool. Each one of us, at least we have to think about it. Maybe there's not something, maybe 90% of what you hear in this room, some of you might not be interested. That's completely cool. Some of you might want to go be a Buddhist and do mindfulness meditation. Completely cool. Some might want to go and become a monk or nun and study this stuff 100%. Whatever it is we need to do. It's just using your mind. Does that make sense? Good, darling. Okay? Time more? Sure. 6 o'clock. Yes, sweetheart.
You started to touch on this earlier, but I didn't get, to my mind, a definitive answer. And
Good,
I just
darling.
wanted to know, from the Buddhist point of view, whether we have free will.
You see, there's a very good... Let me just go into a bit, try not to be too philosophical. Free will assumes no cause and effect. It assumes a decision somehow not based upon conditions. It really does. It's a very fascinating point. So why don't you spell out a little bit what you mean by free will, because it's a completely Christian idea. I'm not complaining about it, but it came directly from Jesus Christ. It's something that God is said to have given us. So why don't you describe what you think free will means? It's very helpful.
I simply mean whether everything is predetermined or not.
Okay, very good point. I love it. Okay. If you put a rose seed in the ground, what will it become? Will it become an apple tree? Could it become an apple tree? Could it become a house? Could it become Hitler? Could it become a peanut tree? It is absolutely determined, is it not? We'll follow this through, okay? It is completely the natural law of botany that a rose seed, let's follow it through slowly, by definition will only bring a rose bush, given all the conditions that you need and that it all works nicely, the various laws. It's a natural law. Would you not agree with that point? So then would you say that's predetermination? Yes, you would. Now, what's wrong with that? That's just called a law. It's called a law, darling. That's the first point. But who says you can't go and pull it out anytime you like? Who says the rain won't come and destroy it? Given that that is a law, and you've got to have laws. We live in laws in science. We are brilliant at laws, which is why we can manipulate those laws to make the most astonishing things, because there is an absolute certainty that 1 + 1 is 2, that rose seeds bring rose bushes, that when you have this temperature, you'll get this thing. We are brilliant at this. Well, that, I'm sorry, is telling you that's what you mean by predetermination. It's only because we believe in creators and nobody knows and it's all random that when we hear about karma, we think we're being strangled, you know, I've got no choice. Buddha says karma is a natural law. No one made it, no one created it, no one makes it happen. It just is how it is. So free will is a meaningless concept for the Buddha. Just to really argue philosophically about it. You'd use it loosely and say, of course we have free will. But Marika's point, if you cannot access your potential to be patient, then you do not have the potential to be patient. So your ability to choose patience is dependent on the seed being there. So everything that exists is dependent upon something else. Free will implies no cause and effect. It implies absolute, which is meaningless for the Buddha. Hang on a second, sweetheart. Let him follow it through. Just a sec. Stay there, Sam. It's good. Go on. Can you get the point? Just let him do his strip first. What's your name? Mark. Let Mark do his thing and then Sam can talk. Go on, Mark. Can you see my point?
Yes, I can.
Let me even give you a better example. Let's say you're a brilliant gardener and I've never heard of botany. And you have just got an acre of ground out there and you've just planted all these seeds, okay? And you then proceed to describe to me how it will look in 50 years. And I'll go, wow, Mark's clairvoyant. No, Robina, I just know the laws of botany, you will tell me. Now, we don't think that's predetermination, do we? We think it's just the law. Well, the same here, baby. If you kill, it'll bring that result. If you lie, it'll get that result. That's what Buddha's saying. It's nothing special. But it's because it's so new to us. We think it's kind of like weird and spiritual and shocking and punishment and all this rubbish, you know. It's just a law. Buddha says it's just a law. It happens. If you do this, you get that. Just like rose bushes.
And personal choice between, say...
You determined for this. I gave you the answer. It's like with Marika. It's
so just from your personal perspective then of teaching...
this is Buddha's perspective. I'm telling you Buddha.
Okay.
In my rude words. Go on.
No, okay, but I mean from your perspective.
Go on then.
Do you give these teachings because you think that everyone in this room are predetermined whether or not we're going to be a Buddhist or not? But
bloody hell, I have no interest in that. I'm just here because you all I got asked. It's my job. I was supposed to come along here and talk about whatever I'm supposed to talk about. And you're sitting here and you haven't all walked out the door yet. I'd be looking a bit stupid about talking to you and no one's here. I'm just doing it because I'm doing it. Don't make it more complicated than it is. It's my job, okay? I like this stuff. I'm trying to live according to this. This is my style. This is the laws I'm trying to live by. Every word I'm saying here, I'm not trying to be smarty pants. And truly every word I'm saying is what I'm trying to live by, is what I'm trying to verify, is what I'm trying to find the truth of. And so far I've got some confidence in it and I'm prepared to share it with you, you know. Each of you has got your own story, your own thing with it. I'm not worried about that. I mean, if you like what I'm saying, I'm happy. If not, then I'm happy still. Is that enough, Mark?
Yes.
Good enough for now?
Yeah.
Okay, darling. Go on, Sam, say.
We've gone on long enough.
It's all done? Okay. Well, listen, it's 18:03. I think it's dinner time, isn't it? Yeah? Huh? Yes? Oh, yeah. A request?
We have Lama Chiba tonight, Guru Puja, so some people asked if somebody can explain a little bit more about...
Oh, no, just a bunch of prayers in Tibetan, just a few bells ringing. Come on. Just come if you like a bit of music and off-tune singing. Otherwise, just bring your book. That's what I do. I bring my prayers on my iPod, look. I do my own thing while I'm looking holy. Okay? If you really want to know more, ask a specific question. I don't want to give, it's just stuff. But remember this, okay? If there's anything at all in Buddhist practice that doesn't bring a result in your mind to help you become less deluded and more positive, then it is a complete and utter waste of time. Chuck it in the bin. So all the stuff that's called ritual and religious and mantras, every atom of it is for the same purpose. It's to help change your mind. And that's up to you to adopt or not, as the case may be, as and when you wish. But if there is anything that is not for this purpose, it is just superstition. It's a good point to remember. Okay? Will that do? Yes? Can I sing a little wee prayer? Can I be religious and sing a prayer at the end? So this little wee prayer is just finishing. It's like, I didn't do the first one to begin. I usually like bookends, but this end one is just, a prayer is just a bunch of words, isn't it? And words are thoughts, and thoughts are aspirations, and everything, and intention and karma come down to being thoughts. Everything is a thought. Everything exists on the tip of the wish, the thought, as Lama Zopa says. So this little prayer is just sort of saying, two little prayers. My voice is a bit hoarse. I don't know whether I can sing. We'll see. The first little one is really saying, here we've all been, I don't know, how long have we been here? 2.5 hours. Or however long, I don't remember. As many moments as there have been is as many thoughts as every one of us has had, and every one of those thoughts is like planted a seed in the mind. And so, marvellous, may these seeds ripen in the future, in the development of our own amazing potential, for our sake and the sake of others. And the second little prayer is just saying, may compassion grow and grow. Something like that. Little aspirations, that's all.